Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. Today is June 20th, 2023. Let's begin by standing for an invocation this morning. I'd like to welcome Pastor Matt Swearingen from Cross Point Church to the podium to say our invocation this morning. Pastor, it's good to see you.
Absolutely good to see you. Let's pray. Father God, we come before you this morning eager to honor you. Father, eager to seek your guidance. Father, as we stand in a place where so many important decisions are made that affect so many people, Father, we seek your wisdom. We desire to honor you and pray that you will guide every decision made here today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Pastor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Hammond, and I'm the chairman of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners, and joined by Commissioner Sandelli and Commissioner Ruane, Commissioner Pendergrass, and Commissioner Greenwell. And I'd like to welcome you. I see a lot of new faces, so for many of you, this may be your first county commission meeting today. And so I'm going to take an extra moment as we go through each step to kind of explain what we're doing so that everybody knows where we're at in the process today. So the first thing we do at our county commission meetings is we like to start off with some ceremonial recognitions to recognize people who have done outstanding things in the community. The first one is a favorite of ours. It's the Pet of the Month from Lee County Domestic Animal Services. And for that, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Cecil Pendergrass.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Thanks for coming forward. And we have Spot here this morning. Spot is looking for a new home. And Roger, this is your last chance. I mean, it's Roger, I just want to say thank you. The last 11 years I've been here, Roger and his staff have been so supportive of our shelters, and we have a no-kill shelter, and all of our animal service employees. And thank you for everything you do for those without a voice. So again, Spot is another example of a great pet here in Lee County. You can adopt them. I'm sure we got some programs going on right now. I think we have some going on Fridays and Saturdays right now, right?
We do. It is Petco Love's big adoption event. They just started it this year, and we're very excited about it. It's their mega adoption. So Friday and Saturday, we're going to have waived adoption fees with Petco Love. So come on out. You don't need to wait until then, though. Dogs are only $30 right now if you don't want to wait. And then, like I said, Friday and Saturday, it's waived adoption fees. Spot, he's a great dog. He does need, if you're an exerciser, he's a great dog to have because he can lose a little bit of weight. So, he likes
Roger,
his treats.
You can walk with him or run with the dog, man.
But he was great in the car, absolutely great in the car, which is a good thing. We had to drive around for a Spot today. So he's a great dog. He seems to like Troy. Troy might be taking him home. I don't know.
Thank you. And I just want to say this is usually a successful program. Usually after the pet comes up today, somebody, sometimes even in this building here, adopts the pet before they get back to the shelter. So
that is true. We have had that happen quite a bit. And like it's still kitten season, so come on out for those kittens because we have about 200 in-house right now.
And it's still free for kittens right now?
It is always free for kittens during kitten season, and adopt one, get one. So I guess that doesn't, they're always free, and adopt one, get one. So come out and get those kittens. We had about 40 come in just on Saturday.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Commissioner Pendergrass and Spot. Good luck. Good luck. We're all pulling for you. All right, our next proclamation this morning will be the National Pretrial Probation and Parole Week, and I'd like to recognize Commissioner Ruane for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If anyone here is from pretrial and probation, please come up.
And we'll just have you guys come right up to the podium while the commissioner reads a resolution into the record.
Mr. Chairman, there is seats upstairs if anyone doesn't want to stand. Feel free to go upstairs if you want to sit. Just want to make that clear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
So I'm going to read this proclamation. We'll come up and take a photo. We'll have a few words from you all. Appreciate that. Thank you. Whereas community supervision and case management are essential parts of the judicial system. Whereas pretrial and probational professionals are committed to treating everyone with dignity, courtesy, and respect, being responsive and meeting the needs of those we serve, being accessible, fair, effective, and accountable. And whereas pretrial and probation professional flows evidence basic principles through universal screening, utilization of valid risk instruments, motivational interviewing, and skill building. Whereas pretrial and probation professionals conduct interviews and investigations to provide critical information to the courts. And whereas pretrial and probation professionals are responsible for supervising defendants, probationers in the community, enforcing court orders, promoting public safety, and promoting positive behavioral change. And whereas pretrial and probation professionals provide comprehensive court case management services to assist the court. And whereas pretrial and probation professionals, in the partnership with community agencies and groups, promote prevention, intervention, and advocacy. Whereas pretrial and probation professionals provide coordination in case management, support the problem-solving courts that help change and save lives. And whereas pretrial and probation professionals are stronger together, collaborating and foster teamwork. Now, therefore, it's resolved by the Board of County Commissioners hereby proclaims the week of July 16th through the 22nd as Pretrial and Probation Supervisor Week, and encourage all citizens and agency partners to honor these professionals and recognize their commitment. It's signed by our chairman, Brian Hammond, on June 20th.
Congratulations, folks. So we'll have you come up here and take a picture, and then after the picture, if we could have one spokesperson say something on behalf of the group. Who can he present the proclamation
Who would like
to?
the proclamation?
Maybe Lisa?
Maybe Lisa? No problem.
There you go. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Make sure you tag Commissioner Pendergrass on Facebook, okay?
Anytime.
This doesn't have a name, Roger? Doesn't have a name on it? Just an address? Thank you, sir.
After we give you this card, can you put your name on it, please? For public hearing item number 2.
Apologize, Lisa. All right, we'll get to it. Well, I've got an address on there, so I'll just call it by the address later, and they can say their name for the record before we get started. All right, I apologize, Lisa. Go ahead and share with us a little bit about your group.
Absolutely, thank you. Good morning to everyone. It's my privilege, pleasure, and honor to be here today and recognize and thank the Lee County Criminal Division pretrial and probation officers. I am so proud of the courageous work that they do. Day in and day out, these men and women dedicate themselves to find innovative ways to motivate positive behavioral change. They don't simply enforce court orders and send individuals on their way. They build a rapport, understand each individual's situation, and ultimately, they provide tools and resources that aid on getting a person on a path to success. We promote public safety and understand the need to hold individuals accountable for their actions. It takes a special person to be a pretrial or probation officer, and we are blessed to have the very best. I would encourage everyone to thank a pretrial or probation officer today. We thank you, Board of County Commissioners, for your support and for your recognition. I'll leave you with this quote by Angelo. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, thank you, Commissioner Ruane. For our next presentation, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Greenwell for National Parks and Recreation Month.
Thanks, Chairman. Any of the Parks and Recreation people want to come on up to the podium that's here? Anybody?
They're coming.
Here we go.
Coming in now.
Usually they bring props
Yep, they got it.
every year.
Y'all come on out.
Yeah, they did. Matt, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Just have y'all gather right by the podium.
All right, I'll read the resolution, and afterwards we'll come up and get a photo, and then we'll have someone speak. Okay? All right. Whereas the National Recreation of Parks and Association has declared July as National Park and Recreational Month, and as whereas the Lee County Parks and Recreation touches the lives of children and adults alike and positively impacts the social, economic, and environmental quality of Lee County, and as whereas Park and Recreation promotes health, wellness, benefits by providing space for sports, hiking, swimming, and other activities designed for active lifestyles. And as whereas parks and recreation agencies provide critical childhood development activities with out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education. And as whereas parks and greenways, preserves, and open spaces provide welcome respite from our fast-paced, high-tech lives by promoting time spent in nature, which provides impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being. And whereas parks and playgrounds, nature trails and open spaces, community and recreation centers, as well as historic sites, make communities attractive and desirable places to live and play and visit. And whereas parks and recreation is an essential and provides adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters while protecting and preserving our natural environment. Now, therefore, being resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida, proclaim the month of July 2023 as Parks and Recreation Month. Parks and Recreation Month in Lee County, and urges all citizens to visit the parks, especially on the weekend of July 29th and 30th, 2023, when parking fees will be waived at Lee County recreational parks and boat ramps, and admission will be free at any county community pools. Duly executed the 20th day of June 2023, signed by Chairman Brian Hammond.
All right, free parking. Let's do it. While they're lining up, this is one of our departments that we're all extremely proud of here on the Board of County Commissioners. We have world-class parks. Some of them a little dinged up after the hurricane, but we're getting them back in shape, that's for sure. We thank you guys for all you do.
Just squeeze out.
We'll have our spokesperson say a few words.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mac Young, Lee County Parks and Recreation. Thank you guys for this opportunity to recognize the Parks and Recreation. And we appreciate all the hard work that our staff continue to do, all the departments that's contributed to all the work that needs to be done at Lee County Parks and Recreation. Not only for the July 29th and 30th, we encourage everybody to continue to use all our parks. Visit the swimming pools, the parks, the walking trails, the canoes, the kayaks, launching and boat ramps. As we continue through this difficult process, we're going to make sure that we do it safe and continue to help our people of Lee County. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, we do have one final ceremonial presentation this morning, and it's one that I think is hopefully going to be a really special day. We will have a video in just a second for that, but wanted to real quickly just take a moment to recognize our county manager, Roger Desjarlais. This will be Roger's last meeting with us, Lord willing. It's a special morning as we're celebrating the career of County Manager Desjarlais and thanking him for his service to our agency and the community as he heads off into retirement. So to begin, we would like to share this video with you all.
Well, today, Roger, I wish you the best in your retirement. I look back over the years, obviously not only as a county commissioner when we went through the pandemic, but as the mayor of the city of Sanibel. I can't thank you enough for your guidance and for your wisdom in all different decisions we've come together. Just do me a favor, have a great retirement.
Roger, I personally want to thank you and your family for everything you've done for Lee County. Your love and passion has shown and made Lee County a better place for all of us. In the last 11 years I worked with you, I never could have done everything without you. And everything you brought to the board, your staff around you, they appreciate you, and all the employees of Lee County, we want to thank you for everything you've done for Lee County, your love of Lee County, and please stay involved with us. Happy retirement.
Roger, I've been incredibly blessed in my whole life with a great family, with friends, and valued associates. And in that journey, I've met a lot of great people who've helped me both personally and professionally, and I put you certainly within that list. I want to thank you for that. You know, culture is hard to create, and it's certainly hard to sustain. I think you've done a great job with that in helping us with the one organization, which helped us internally as a county and certainly for the constituents that we represent. So I want to thank you for that. It's been a pleasure to know you both personally and professionally, and I hope you'll stop back and see us and continue to guide us in the future.
Roger, wow. When I think about the last 10 years that we've had together, we have had some experiences when you look at the hurricanes, the pandemic, the algae crises. Any one of those would have been career defining, and we seem to fit them all in the last 10 years. And it was always great to have you with us. You were a steady hand. You always made what you thought were the best decisions for the people of Lee County, and that's something I truly respect. You are leaving behind a legacy of an amazing team of talented people and one of the most stable governments, not only in the county, but in the state of Florida. I just appreciate you dedicating your life to public service and to the people of Lee County. And I wish you and Vivian and your family nothing but wonderful, amazing adventures in your retirement. Thanks, my friend.
Working together, we can and do make a difference for the residents of our community.
We take our duty to protect and serve seriously, as well as help those in need.
Roger, congratulations on your retirement. Enjoy your time with your family. As a commissioner, new commissioner, I want to thank you for everything you've done for me, help guiding me to make me understand our purpose and what we're doing here in Lee County and how the future and what the future holds for all of us. So enjoy your retirement. Thank you for everything you've done. I gotta admit, I'm a little jealous.
Well, congratulations, Roger. It's not your turn to talk yet, Roger. We've got more folks who want to share lots of stories about you. We'll start with our constitutionals. I'd like to invite each of them to come up and share a few words. And let's start with our sheriff, Carmine Marcino. And after him, we'll have our clerk, Kevin Carnes. Yeah, right there at the podium, Sheriff. That'd be great.
Good morning, Commission. Roger, wow, the day has come. We have, like commissioners had said, gone through so much. The pandemic, Hurricane Ian, I think you and I have spent hours and hours and hours on the phone, sitting next to each other, thinking about what we're going to do to make the best decisions imaginable to our great residents. I will tell you, there's so many great memories. I want to say thank you. 47 years of dedicated service. It's over 4 decades, almost 5. That's amazing. That's an accomplishment in itself. It takes a lot to serve the community. It takes a lot to be in a position like yourself and others where you stand there and you make these very, very critical, tough decisions along the way. We talked from plywood on the house. We talked to countless different things, not just as a coworker and colleague, but as a friend. And I have to agree with Commissioner Greenwell. I'm envious. I'm not sure what I would do the day I wake up when I don't have to be somewhere and someone is not trying to attack me with press. It's pretty amazing. No pun intended. But I'm going to say thank you. I hope and pray that your retirement is the best ever. It's well-deserved. And I pray that you take that time, because at the end of the day, everyone's here to probably complain about something, okay? And at the end of the day, you're going to go home, one, not have to listen to it, and two, you're going to get to spend time with your family. And I use that word family often, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, and that's what matters most. So God bless you and your family, and I hope that you have the most amazing retirement ever. You well deserve it.
And now our clerk, Kevin Carnes, followed by our property appraiser, Matt Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Roger, it is a privilege and honor to dedicate your long service to Lee County. You've accomplished so much throughout your career, and on behalf of the entire clerk office, we greatly appreciate your service. Throughout your tenure as county manager, you've supported at least 3 clerks, and each helped us navigate through really complex challenges, from back to the rocket docket era of the foreclosure crisis, the pandemic, and of course, under my tenure, Hurricane Ian. You are a true professional who's shown that excellence is something worth aiming for every single day. My team and I appreciate your leadership and collaboration, and we wish you well on your future endeavors. Congratulations.
I'd like to call our property appraiser, Matt Caldwell, followed by our supervisor of elections, Tommy Doyle. Oh, Matt was unable to make it today? Okay, how about supervisor of elections, Doyle? I know you've got a good story to tell.
Well, first of all, congratulations, Roger. You know, when I saw that, I wanted to bring a picture of you with hair. And when I saw that, I was glad, because when I met Roger, he had hair. He was a good-looking fella. He's still a good-looking fella. Yeah. But Vivian, his wife, introduced us probably over 50 years ago. And I followed his career path all the way through where he is today. He always tells me the story about how when he was in Broward County that he had to take over the elections because the election supervisor completely failed her job. And the county had to take it over and run the entire election. And I hope that never happens to us.
There you go.
So anyway, Roger, I've been blessed to have you as our manager. You know, I thank you for answering my calls every time I called. When I was in desperate need of something, you always helped me and made my job a lot easier. I hope you follow do what's it called, do what you want to do in your retirement, get those points out, travel, whatever it takes, be happy. I'm not going to say I envy you yet, but it ain't long for me. So, congratulations.
There you go. I'd like to call our tax collector, Noel Branning, followed by our state attorney, Amira Fox.
Roger, congratulations. I will not share any stories that my predecessor perhaps has shared with me about your time together in the past. What I will share is that your commitment to public service in this county is beyond compare. It has been my honor to serve alongside you on the United Way Board, but it's been my honor to work alongside you in this role. You know, retirement is bittersweet, right? It's that chapter. It's what did I do? And the bigger question, did I make an impact? You did. And I want you to know, and I want to thank you for a cup of coffee where you gave me 3 very important gifts. You listened without solving. You heard me without judging. And you supported me in whatever that looked like. Thank you. I am so happy for you and Viv. I know that your next chapter is going to be wonderful. I still want you involved in United Way. So pick up my, the phone when I call. And I just think that your service has been extraordinary. Congratulations.
All right, I'll call State Attorney Amira Fox, and then I'll have Representative Jenna Persons-Mullica after her.
Well, Roger, I don't know if it's the best to go last out of all the constitutional officers, but I think it is because I want to wrap up everything they said by saying something to you that I'm not sure everybody knows, which is that the State Attorney's Office is a state-funded office. But because of you and this county commission and our tremendous support, in this county, we have had the lowest crime rate in all of Florida for 10 years in a row. And thank you, Sheriff Marcino, for that also. That is a big deal. And we could not have done it without the support of this county. You all stepped forward for us, funded us for special projects that you did not have to, and it has made a tremendous difference in our battle against crime, our battle against fentanyl. And I just want to thank you, my staff and I, from the bottom of our hearts for what you've done for this community, because it has made, I will share with you, a tremendous difference. It's no coincidence that you held this position during that 10 years that we've achieved that lowest crime rate in the state of Florida. So I thank you also. I echo what's already been said. The first thing I said to you today was, you lucky dog, and I really meant it. So all the best to you for a wonderful retirement.
And Representative Jenna Persons-Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Roger, I'm rarely out of words, but I will start by telling you, I told Hunter he had to wait from being born until we had this opportunity to celebrate you. And I'm so grateful for personally the years and years of friendship, the years and years of mentorship that you've provided to me in learning how best to serve our community. And as a member of our delegation and chair of the delegation, I'm so grateful for your leadership, the leadership of our commissioners, in making sure that we continue to do what's best for the residents of Lee County. We would not be successful in Tallahassee and bringing home wins to Lee County without your partnership and the partnership of your board and your team, and we are so grateful for that. And I'll never forget, after Hurricane Ian, watching you day in and day out, dedicating your hours and your time to this community, and your energy and your strength, because we all needed that strength. And I'm so excited that my baby will grow up in a county where your legacy has played a huge role, and it's going to be an even better county for generations to come. Thank you, Roger.
All right, and so as we mentioned earlier, Roger has been extremely involved in the United Way, and we would like to invite Janine Joy, the President and CEO of the United Way of Lee, Hendry, and Glades County, to say a few words.
Roger. Roger's been an advocate for our local nonprofits and community for years. He's been a fund distribution team leader, cabinet member, board chair, and campaign chair for our United Way. Roger chaired the 2019-2020 campaign which not only reached the campaign goal, but surpassed the previous year by 3.3% to raise $10.78 million, all during a global pandemic. Roger has also put a team together that helped catapult the Lee County Employee Giving Campaign into the United Way Circle of Excellence, the dress up in the corner there. That was awesome. Through new collaborations with the county, we've been able to positively affect more of our residents with CARES and ARPA funding. We thank you, Roger, for being such a caring leader over the years. I personally want to thank you for being an advisor, a mentor, and my friend. We truly appreciate all you've done for our community, our nonprofits, and our United Way. And I hope you know that you can go into retirement knowing you have succeeded, because to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. Thank you.
So at this time, we would like to ask Roger and his family to please join us over by this gift that we have. Don't uncover it yet, but we do have a special proclamation we would like to read to you, Roger, and your family. So if you'll join us right here by the gift.
And the family, yes.
Family, Viv, yeah, come forward and support Roger.
Well, those grandkids gotten bigger.
I know you're so blessed to have your family here with you today. And Roger, it is a real pleasure to be able to read this resolution into the record. It reads as follows: whereas Roger Desjarlais has served as Lee County Manager for 10 years and prior to that served an additional 23 years in Lee County government. And whereas he helped guide the county out of the Great Recession and into an era of firm fiscal responsibility. And whereas during these 10 years as County Manager, he and his team managed and cared for this community through flooding from record rainfalls, Hurricane Irma, blue-green algae, a cyber attack, COVID-19, and Hurricane Ian. And whereas during his tenure, roads, libraries, water treatment plants, and so many more projects were built, and our parks and conservation lands were enlarged and enhanced. And whereas Roger encouraged us to go beyond serving as local government to become a community leader as a United Way pace setter. And whereas he developed the one organization philosophy that creates a collaborative work environment and makes Lee County government the employer of choice. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida recognizes and thanks Roger Desjarlais for his dedication and service to the commissioners, employees, and the residents and visitors here in Lee County. And this board wishes him the very best for him and his family during his retirement. It's signed this 20th day of June 2023 by me, the chairman of the board. Roger, congratulations. So, commissioners, why don't you join us down here? We can all get a picture together. I'll try and talk loud so the mic can pick it up. But Roger, I want to present you, here's the proclamation from the commission. This is also a proclamation from State Senate President Matthew Papadomo recognizing your time. And perhaps the biggest presentation we'd like to present you with, a plaque honoring your service to Lee County.
First of all, I was always taught that if you have something important to say, go to the podium. And
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I was going to say, Dave, start the clock, please. And can I touch the microphone? Is that okay?
No, don't do that.
Don't touch the mic?
Wait for Willie Joe for that one.
Okay. Well, it's hard to know where to begin, commissioners and everyone. Truly, I'm not very often at a loss for words, but it's kind of difficult today. There are so many people in my life that I'm grateful for, and it starts with my family. Everyone who knows me knows how important they are. They are my reason for being. Vivian has always been at my side every step of the way over all these years, the good times, the bad times, the difficult times. I've uprooted her on more than one occasion to travel, work somewhere else. And so to Vivian and my family, I can't thank you enough. For all of those with the kind words today, thank you. This work that we do, and I want to say this with tremendous respect for everyone who works for local government, for elected officials. You know how difficult it can be. On a good day, for me, I think about 40% of the people I talk with are happy when we're finished. And that's a good day. And the criticisms come fast and furiously. And those of us who do this kind of work, whether it's the county attorney in his office, county commissioners, or the administrators and employees, we grow pretty thick skin over time. But I tell you, the criticisms and sort of the mean-spirited nature that comes our way periodically really hurts our families. And if there's a bright light at the end of the tunnel for politics in this country, I hope that bright light brings some statesmanship back to the world that we work in. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to serve this community. Commissioner Pendergrass was one of 5 who hired me in 2013. 3 of your colleagues are no longer with us, and we miss them greatly. But thank you to you all for allowing me to do the work that I have been able to do. Thank you to the citizens of Lee County for paying your property taxes.
There you go.
And if you add an extra $10 this year, because it's going to be tough. Dave's going to need the help. No, Pete's going to need the help. Mostly, I want to thank, I got to back up one. Richard, thank you. And the attorneys in your office. Richard manages a law firm on behalf of local government, and I've never worked with a finer attorney in local government than Richard and his staff. It's pretty uncommon around the state of Florida for county managers and county attorneys to have the kind of relationship that Richard and I have, and that our 2 offices have with each other. It's a cooperative relationship that has saved Lee County hundreds of millions of dollars. And Richard can talk about that at some length, because he's the one that had to manage us through all those potential litigations opportunities that were out there. So thank you, Richard, and your team. Dave and the senior team, thank you for all the heavy lifting over time. If it weren't for the work that you all do with all the department heads, this Lee County would be in a very difficult position now. But because of your work, it's going to be a difficult budget season, likely, but with the strength of this team, I have absolutely no doubt that it's going to be just fine. But lastly, thank you to Lee County employees. These people who come to work for local government, yes, everyone needs a job, but people who are dedicated to local government are some of the finest people that I know, some of the finest people I've ever met. They are dedicated. They have an incredible work ethic, and given the opportunity, to perform, they will never, ever, ever let you down. It's important that this collegial relationship that we've all had for 10 years continues. When the collegial relationships break down, we've seen these in the past. We can go back 15 years to see that. When those break down, it ripples through the whole organization. So, to all the employees, thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for your loyalty to Lee County, and thank you for providing the kind of service that you do. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, And now to provide the closing argument, our county attorney, the person who's been by Roger's side for the last 10 years, they were hired both right around the same time, Richard Wesch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Gee, Roger said such nice things, I have to amend what I was going to say. Cut that out and make it a little bit shorter. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. I first met Roger probably back in the early 2000s at a Florida Association of County Attorney, Administrator, and Counties meeting in, I believe, Tallahassee. Roger was the manager in Broward County, and I was the administrator in a jurisdiction north of here, slightly smaller. I remember Roger arrived in a county-owned stretch limousine with his name and title on the side. I arrived in a rented donkey. Roger also had his entourage around him, several deputy county managers, the limo driver, of course, a few bodyguards, Roger's personal tailor. I believe he had a stylist and maybe even a dry cleaner in tow. I, on the other hand, had to clean my room before I checked in. Many years later, I had the opportunity to come here and work in Lee County and found that Roger was the manager. Given our various backgrounds, I wondered how I would be received. To Roger's credit, from day one, he made me feel very welcome. We found that our views of management and county organization were very similar. We both strove to make a one organization under Roger's leadership. He was gracious enough to include our office. Although our roles were clearly different, Roger pledged not to practice law, and I promised not to practice administration. It's hard to believe that 10 years have gone by. We've seen a lot of issues, a lot of matters. We've weathered them successfully with the direction of the various boards we've been blessed to work with. In public service, the true test, I believe, is whether you leave the jurisdiction better than when you got here. Roger, you've passed that test with flying colors. Lee County is certainly a better place for having you been here and your service. It's time to move on, regrettably, from our perspective as your coworkers and employees. Any uneasiness we feel is because of our own selfishness. You have earned the right to go forward, be a husband, father, and grandfather. I'll miss our discussions, but most of all, I'll miss my friend.
Thank you, Mr. County Attorney. And I want to invite everyone to stick around. I know that many of you have come today with plenty of good things that you'd like to share with Roger, your way of thanking him for his service to our community. And Roger and all of us will be downstairs celebrating at a reception in the courthouse lobby at noon today. So please take a moment to stop by, enjoy the goodies and the fellowship, and share with Roger your well wishes as this is his last meeting with us as a county manager. And Roger, again, thank you and congratulations. Job well done. All right, we are going to move to what's called the recap. This is the portion of the agenda where we talk about additions, deletions, and changes to the agenda. So just an introduction to what we'll do here is we'll talk about any changes or deletions to the agenda. The way the agenda is built in Lee County is we have a consent agenda that has items 1 through 61 on it. The items that are on the consent agenda are items that are typically routine items where we're moving forward things that we have previously already given direction on. So it might be like the wastewater treatment plant needs to buy more chemicals. Here's the item. Do you approve it? We move all of the items 1 through 61 on the consent agenda typically in bulk form unless somebody pulls one for discussion, at which point then we'll take that item individually. Then we'll have the administrative agenda. That's where we talk about bigger items that we're seeing for the first time or maybe bigger expenditures, items that need a little more public vetting. So we'll handle those on the administrative agenda. And then we'll have the public hearing agenda where we talk about public hearings. Now at this time during the recap, commissioners are able to make motions and talk about if there's any changes they'd like to make to the agenda. So I'll just go ahead and offer that up. Commissioners, are there any changes that anybody would like to see made to the agenda today?
Chairman, if I may, good morning. I would like to take a matter out of order to continue the 9:30 a.m. public hearing, item number 2, and tomorrow's zoning case, CPA 2023-00004, related to the building height due to public input. This will provide a chance for more dialogue.
Okay, so you're making that as a motion to defer that item to a date certain?
I would like to make the motion. To continue the 9:30 a.m. public hearing, item number 2, till August 15th, and continue the June 21st zoning case, CPA 2023-00004, to August the 16th.
Okay, so that is a motion that's been made. There's a second from Commissioner Ruane.
I'd like the first to consider a minor modification.
Okay, Commissioner Ruane.
I obviously am against this, no secret about it. I recognize that I'm in the minority here. What I'd like to do is, in my opinion, we've failed process here. I don't believe that the public is aware of this. I'd like to extend the date to September 5th and September 6th. I'd like the opportunity, since it's District 1, to go out and meet with the various stakeholders, from the Captiva panel to Sanibel residents to South Seas Homeowner Association, Condominium Association. I think we owe that, and I'm not denying the motion that was made on January 17th. We talked about resiliency, and this isn't resiliency. So if the motion maker would honor my request to September 5th to allow this commissioner to go out to his district and explain this in transparency.
So the request is same motion, just with different dates, September 5th and September 6th?
Yeah, I'll honor that and move the dates.
Okay, so that is the motion, and that is the second. The motion's made by Commissioner Greenwell, and the second's made by Commissioner Ruane. Mr. County Attorney, do you need any clarification on that motion that's been made?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So at this time, we do need to take public comment on the motion before we vote on it. And so what's been brought to the floor, folks, is they're asking to go ahead and delay this. Basically, I don't look at this personally as one commissioner who's going to vote on it. I don't look at this as a motion to continue. I look at this as a motion to really start over and to go back to the community and to talk to the community about these changes, help explain what they are, what they mean, and actually get their feedback on what's being presented here so that things can be amended and made better before there's a final vote taken. And so that's what we're asking you to give public comment on this morning. Do you want us to go forward with the motion to continue this, or would you like us to go ahead and hear the item today? And so at this time, I'll go ahead and call for public comment on that motion that's on the floor. I have a huge stack of cards. You're welcome to come speak for 3 minutes on that, but you're also welcome to do something that's a very common practice that I see that they do at state hearings a lot, where they say, I waive my time speaking in support of the motion to continue this. So you could waive your time speaking and just say, I support the motion that's on the floor to continue this to a later date. You're welcome to do that as well, but you're also welcome to speak. Would you like to discuss the motion right now before we take public comment? Okay, so Commissioner Pendergrass has requested to discuss the motion before we take public comment. So Commissioner Pendergrass, you're recognized.
Thank you for the motion maker in a second. I totally support the motion. I'd just like to recap, though. The comment was made a minority in this vote. I have not stated how I was going to vote because I've not heard public comment or seen all the facts yet. So I'm never going to state before the meeting that how I'm going to vote on something without hearing from you first. So I'll look forward to that. I know we're here today because the initial intentions was very well done. It was very articulate, and we were here today because there was good intentions on Lee County, I believe, to bring this forward. That's why the board supported this back in January. So make sure that everybody understands I'm here to hear from you, and obviously the commissioner's going to do workshops in the area to hear from you. And at the end of the day, I'm sure we'll have a good product to come back to vote on.
Yeah.
So then I will make that decision based upon the final public comment and the final evidence, the facts before us. So.
Commissioner Pendergrass, thank you very much. And that's a good introduction to, maybe just if you'll allow me and indulge me for another minute before we start public comment, I just wanted to take a moment to explain the process, because I know for a lot of people this could be your first county commission meeting, and I know you're probably here today because of things that you heard, and you may not even be a really happy person right now when you've shown up, and so I want people to help understand how the commission works, because we are actually your legislative body, we're your representatives, and so just briefly, I want to introduce the folks that sit over here at the left table. We've celebrated Roger today, but Roger's our county manager. That is the executive branch of the county. So their job is to run the day-to-day operations of the county. And so what happens is when the commissioners, who are the legislative body of the county, give them direction, it's their job to actually prepare the item for the agenda. So in this case, we actually gave a direction about working on land development code amendments that I think when we talked about them, the thought was resiliency in response to the hurricane. And so we gave that direction to the staff. And so the staff, they're professionals. They do this for a living. They work in community development, and they deal with the land development codes all day long. And so they went and prepared an amendment. They also worked closely with our county attorney's office. So the county attorney on the right side, this is his team. He's our lawyer. He's basically the lawyer for the board. It's his job to make sure that we keep everything legal, that the amendments as they're drafted up are legally sufficient. And so the one thing that I wanted you to know too, finally, is the commissioners are the deciding body. We're the decision makers. We actually don't do the day-to-day work, and we also are prohibited from talking to each other about county business prior to a meeting. So we don't even get a chance to discuss the issue that you're going to talk to us about. This is our first time discussing it with each other too. So the amendment was prepared, it was reviewed, it was brought to us, and now this is actually today our first time to publicly discuss these amendments and actually say how we feel about it. And so much like in a court case, we're going to take the evidence that was presented to us, we're going to listen to the testimony from you all about how this will affect you, and then we're going to make a decision at the end of the day. And the decision that happens to be before us right now is to delay this or continue this to September 5th and September 6th. And so at that point, Commissioner Ruane, last word, and then I want to get to public comment.
Sure. I mean, it's an opportunity, and we don't have an opportunity to talk about this at all. And again, I understand the motion that was made on January 17th. It was about resiliency, and that's what it was. I don't deny I made this amendment to obviously deal with flood and resiliency. I think it's just important that we hear from the community. I think it's really important that they weigh in. And I'm just surprised as this District 1 Commissioner that I never had a briefing before this went live. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time then, Commissioners, I'm going to go ahead and get into the public comment cards. The first card I have is from Greg Spencer. And then what I'll do is I'll call you up to the podium. When you come up to speak, just come right to the podium. You'll notice there's a green light, yellow light, and red light at the podium here. You'll have a 3-minute time limit to speak. We have several hundred, probably 100 speakers today, I would say. So if everybody could please, just out of respect for everyone's time, keep to that 3-minute time limit. When the red light goes off, I'm going to go ahead and call the next speaker at that time so that we make sure that we're fair with how we treat everybody. And then finally, just a note about decorum and respect. Let's try not to have any booing or hissing or anything that would intimidate any of the other speakers. We want to treat everybody the way we would like to be treated while we're standing at the podium, okay?
Chairman, if I could, just a point of order. I know you said it earlier, just recap for speaking, the motion, based on public comment should be only about the motion of delaying this till September, not about the item itself, nor about the land development codes.
Correct. So to restate what Commissioner Pendergrass said, your comments today should be on the motion that has been made to continue it till September 5th and 6th. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. At this time, let's call Greg Spencer, and then after that, I'll call Mayor Richard Johnson from Sanibel. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners and residents of Lee County. My name is Greg Spencer. I'm the president of the ownership group for South Seas Resorts. Hurricane Ian caused widespread damage to South Seas, which lost its hotel, conference center, golf course, Redfish Pass, 140 vehicles, and nearly all of our resort support buildings. Initially, we focused our attention on the community and employees' well-being. We helped clear roads on the islands for emergency crews. We supported search and rescue operations. We hosted National Guard troops, and we helped our employees and neighbors get back on their feet. Today, we are ready to turn the page on the next chapter, the rebuilding of South Seas. Unfortunately, there's confusion, misunderstanding, and misinformation being shared about our plans. To be clear, South Seas has not submitted any formal request to Lee County asking for a change in height or density for our buildings. Resort ownership has no intention to pursue structures 75 feet in height. To be clear, we will not seek to use that section of the LDC. We do not believe anything over 3 habitable floors would be the right look for South Seas. We want to build a world-class resort that mirrors the characteristics of the surrounding community. Before Hurricane Ian, our property was showing its age. Now we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to rebuild South Seas so it's amongst the finest luxury resorts in the country. Regarding building height, before the storm, more than half of the residences at South Seas were 3 stories over either parking or support facilities. Buildings range in height from 42 feet to 48 feet above grade, and many do not conform to current FEMA flood elevations. When the time comes to submit plans, our goal is to build a more resilient structure that maintain the character of Captiva while complying with all local, state, and federal requirements. The same holds true about density. We've heard that South Seas wants a limited density. That is simply not true. We're not asking for it, nor would we want it. South Seas is spectacular because it's not a jam-packed city. It's a tranquil retreat of paradise. In both cases, height and density, misinformation is spreading quickly. South Seas is not currently part of the Captiva plan, but that doesn't mean the resort intends to do its own thing. We intend to share our plans and work transparently in partnership with the community before we formally submit anything to the county. Given that we're in a crucial point of the post-storm recovery of Captiva, we believe that delaying any vote by commissioners on the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan as proposed would provide ample opportunities for everyone to get on the same page, county staff, residents, and businesses. It's important that we're all looking at the facts as they relate to government requirements and codes and regulations. Our team is ready to join these public conversations to discuss how South Sea's current height governance, which is tied to surface grade, prohibits rebuilding existing structures while discouraging construction of a resort that is marketable, insurable, and resilient to future storms. Our vision for South Seas is to build an updated world-class property that seamlessly fits within a world-class community. The confusion rumors about our plans are clear signs that we need more time to discuss the subject. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call Mayor Richard Johnson from Sanibel, followed by Callie Johnson. Mayor, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. I will stick to the matter at hand, which is a vote to postpone. I very much appreciate the motion that you put on the floor. Commissioner, I very much appreciate the amendment that you added to that motion. Thank you. I think that positions us well. Before I get started, Roger, congratulations, sir. I think this is exactly what we need to be doing. I think we need to take a good, close look at this. I think we need to put this back into the public view. I think we need to get all the stakeholders at the table. This is a big deal. This is a big change. We should have been involved prior to this. Unfortunately, we weren't, and that's where we are today. And I think that's why you have the public comment that you have today. What I would look forward to is exactly what Commissioner Rain talked about, is have an opportunity to engage the businesses on Sanibel and Captiva, engage the residents of Sanibel and Captiva, engage the folks from the Timbers Group at South Seas Plantation as well. I think we have an opportunity to work together. This started out back in January earlier as a resiliency. This is not resiliency. But I look forward to getting it back to resiliency. And if anyone in Lee County knows and understands the importance of resiliency, it's our barrier islands, our jewels of Lee County. We recognize that we need to make changes. We recognize that we need to be more resilient. We're doing that in our own community now, in our own city now. We're looking at ways that we can do that. I look forward to the conversations that we have so that we can talk about resiliency. I look forward to the conversations that we'll have in September that will deal with making the necessary changes that we can be more resilient. I look forward to the conversations that we have that will discuss how we go about conducting business in our county for the benefit of all of Lee County and all the residents and businesses. I very much appreciate your time today, and I will yield what little is left. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, let's call Callie Johnson, followed by Donald Depew. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Callie Johnson. I work with my family to own and operate Bailey's General Store on Sanibel and the Island Store on Captiva. I want to thank you for your motion this morning. And I also would like to tell you, after rebuilding my house after Ian, I could certainly use the financial benefits that this might bestow on our store. However, I oppose these changes, and I will again in September. I'm not willing to sell my soul for a profit. The proposed changes would exacerbate the following issues: traffic, public safety, emergency preparedness, overused infrastructure, ecological integrity, and county resiliency. I look forward to the opportunity for me and other stakeholders to have the best collaborative solution in the sunshine. And Commissioner Hammond, as you start over, I would like to do that very much on the proposed land use changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Donald Depew, followed by Robert Brooks. Thank you, Mr. Depew. Robert Brooks, followed by Ty Simrosky. Morning, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you for your time. Especially thank you, Commissioner Ruane, for pushing this over till September. I'm in full favor of that. I must say, as I look around this room and I see people who were standing on the docks a week after the storm, they know what resiliency means. I saw them in boats. I see people from Captains for Clean Water here who took us over. We understand resiliency. To put this forward in the name of resiliency was not the proper thing to do. I look forward to meeting with all of you, and I appreciate your time in giving us the opportunity to put this out in front of our people, to let you know exactly where we stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Ty Simrosky, followed by Ed Reich.
Commissioner Greenwell, thank you very much for your motion. I look forward to working with you and the community on resiliency. And Mr. Ruane, thank you for your amendment. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, is it Ed Reich or Ritz? R-I-Z-C-K? Thank you very much. Walter Chadow? Walter at 2476. And then after Walter will be Bob Moore. Morning.
Thank you. It's Walter Cheatham.
Okay, I apologize.
Commissioners, unfortunately, I'm an educator. I won't be here on September 5th, so if you'll allow me a little bit of leeway.
Sure.
And regarding the motion, I think it's a good idea to take time to consider, but something I'd like you to consider during this time is that we're talking about world-class resorts, but we're also in consideration of the people who live there and call this place home. We saw a cute dog. We talked about parks and we talked about playgrounds. We had a marvelous send-off. But what's the dollar value of these things? And you can't really put a dollar value on them. And I also ask you to consider about the aesthetic integrity of home. And so as you consider which way to go on September 5th, you can say yes to this change. But should you? No, because we're talking about somebody's home. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Bob Moore, followed by Ariel Hoover. Morning.
Hi, thank you. Bob Moore, resident of Sanibel, and I'm actually speaking today on behalf of the Sandcap Citizens for a Resilient Future. And I'll be brief. I thank you for the motion and for the adjustment of the date. I think it's important that there's time The Sandcap Citizens for a Resilient Future is a citizen-led group that was formed in the wake of Hurricane Ian. It consists of concerned citizens and 16 different organizations throughout the community with a mission to, quote, lead community-based initiative to build resilience and protect the vibrancy of our sanctuary islands long into the future. It includes a variety of organizations, and the purpose for the founding of the group was to support citizens and businesses in rebuilding from the storm in ways that would make us more resilient in the face of future storms and other climate-driven events, but also to provide a complement to government-led resilience efforts by providing community-based feedback to officials to help guide and inform decisions. It's important that that feedback be heard, and I appreciate the time, the extra time for that feedback to be considered. There was overwhelming opposition to these changes, and I think it's important for that to be heard and fully processed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ariel Hoover, followed by Brian Seasholes.
Good morning, County Commissioners.
Yeah, good morning.
And citizens. My name is Ariel Hoover, and I am the chair of the Lee County chapter of Climate Reality, an organization dedicated to maintaining a living, resilient world. That's why I'm here, and that's why I wanted to, first of all, thank you for moving that so we have maybe more people here to talk in September. But I also want to say that ramping up building on our barrier islands makes no sense, in my personal opinion and in the opinion of people that want to see us maintain resilience. Increasing building heights and density endangers the people who live in them as catastrophic storms occur, and more catastrophic storms will occur. To survive these events, we must change, not something any of us like to do, including me. But we can't afford to think like we did 100 years ago. We have to plan for the future and more catastrophic weather events. Increasing building heights and density on Captiva or any barrier island is not wise for people who are truly planning for a resilient future. We, the citizens who voted for you, are saying no, and we hope you listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do Brian Seasholes, followed by Councilwoman Holly Smith.
Thank you very much. And I just want to thank you for putting forth the motion to continue this so you can have more listening on this so we can improve the process. When I think about process, I think back to perhaps my favorite Supreme Court Justice, the late great Louis Brandeis, who famously said, quote, "Sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants," unquote. As for the substance of the issue, I think it's very important that we focus on human health and welfare and well-being. Because if we have more traffic on Sanibel Captiva, and it's not only going to be the people who are living at South Seas visiting there, but it's going to be the service people who are going to have to be there as well, that's going to be more gridlock, and especially during high season. And think about what that's going to mean. And I think about this in a very personal way because my next door neighbor in January of 2022 had a heart attack. And it was right at rush hour in the afternoon, but he was able to, the rescue squad was able to get to him. They were able to get him off the island to Health Park, and he lived, he survived because the traffic wasn't so bad. But if we now have a traffic jam every single day, if the causeway is backed up and is wall-to-wall traffic, is parking lot, that's going to affect human health and well-being. And I think we got to think about how this affects first responders. That's ambulance, rescue squad, that's police if they have to get to a dire situation, and that's fire. Because the island right now is a tinderbox with all the dead and dying vegetation. And if we have a fire, God forbid, we're going to have fire come on from Lee County, and if they're not able to get there because the causeway is backed up and Periwinkle is backed up, that could be catastrophic. This is a very real and serious issue as it affects human health and welfare, and I ask you please to keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Councilwoman Holly Smith, followed by Anne Marie Wildman.
County Manager Desjarlais, I won't be able to say that for much longer. Thank you. Thank you for your service. You have certainly made Lee County a better place to live. And to his family, thank you. Your sacrifices for him working 24/7, 365 days is not unnoticed on any of us. It's you that made him work towards a better Lee County. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners, for hearing me today, and thank you for the multiple substantive conversations we have regarding what's proposed today. Commissioner Greenwell, thank you for bringing this forward. I can tell you I would rather have heard a no on the hearing because I am very concerned that we are doing an administrative code change with a manipulation to benefit one developer. And we govern for all. We all govern for all. I do, you do. So I look forward to the continued conversation on how this should move forward for the benefit of all Lee County. So thank you very much for that September 5th. In response to the motion, which is what I need to speak to, thank you, Commissioner Ruane, for the September 5th. It's still a little short for all the work that we have to do because this is a substantial change for Lee County, for Captiva, and the impacts of this are going to be quite intense for all of us. So I know that we're going to work together to see the betterment for the entire Lee County and how it holds. The 90 days, I would ask in addition to include not only the meetings with the stakeholders, and those stakeholders are not limited to the City of Sanibel, Captiva Community Panel, the associations within the association of the Captiva Community Association. I think with staff, everyone needs to work together. You have an advisory regulatory board called the Captiva Community Panel that you've relied on. And I'm at a loss of why they were not brought into this because you've weighed in with their input for over 21 years in making decisions on this very sensitive barrier island. So I do look forward to all of those conversations. We all look forward to those conversations. I would ask as well, since this was based on one specific developer exempting South Seas from development and South Seas, not all of Captiva, I would ask that it is required to be included any plans that they have because we don't even know what the impacts are going to be unless you know what they are doing up there. And that's when we can have a real conversation of how that impacts all of the stakeholders. So I would ask in your amendment to potentially consider making sure those plans are made available so we're not chasing our tails. Let's know what we're doing so we can make the decisions, make them to the benefit of all, and work towards that. Thank you very much.
Anne Marie Wildman, followed by David Mintz.
Thank you. As a 14-year resident of Sanibel, I speak on behalf of myself. I'm also the Associate Executive Director for the Ding Darling Wildlife Society. And we thank you for pushing the motion forward in one regards, in that we do all need to have more information on this. This is a very important subject. Density on Captiva is something none of us are looking forward to because you can't get to Captiva unless you go through Sanibel. So we are adversely impacted in many, many areas. So thank you for taking the time. I hope we can all look at moving forward and having even more support to vote no in September. Thank you.
Thank you. David Mintz, followed by James Evans.
Thank you, Commissioner Greenwell. I'm David Mintz. I'm the Vice President of the Captiva Community Panel. I can say I would have preferred a no vote today, and I don't have to detail my reason for that because I've had the opportunity of speaking with all of you, and I really appreciate it. You were very open, and we had very good discussion, I believe. The proposal should have been about resiliency, but it contains things that don't belong there, that no one asked for, and created all kinds of legitimate, unnecessary anxiety, and I'm sorry that happened. It was an attempt to fix things on Captiva that weren't broken. So I said to you publicly and privately that I believe the proposed ordinance should not be adopted at this time and should have been rejected. And I thought that we should work together to develop a different ordinance that would honor our existing codes and would reflect the legitimate environmental needs of a fragile barrier island, including building heights and density. But having said that, now that the Board of County Commissioners sees fit to continue this matter to after Labor Day, I support that motion. And again, I thank you, and I thank you, and I thank the board. We will work with you to have serious community input, serious discussions, and to develop meaningful proposals and amendments to this proposed ordinance that can work for the Captiva community, for the stakeholders who raised real concerns about the current proposals, and hopefully for South Seas, which we hope will come to value our existing codes, our existing plan, and our existing vision. Thank you.
James Evans, followed by Ken Suarez.
Good morning, Commissioners. James Evans. I'm the CEO of the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, and we own and manage over 2,000 acres of land on Sanibel and Captiva and the surrounding watersheds, and really appreciate you providing the opportunity for public comment today. Commissioner Hammond, really appreciate you talking about a reset. We really need a reset here. Appreciate the motion to extend Commissioner Greenwell's motion here, and we fully support that. But we would be coming here today to ask for a no vote, and we hope that we'll have an opportunity to make this a better plan. But in order to do that, we would really like to see a full staff analysis of the impacts of the Land Development Code changes on the communities affected. That would include a traffic study, evacuation impacts as it relates to hurricane evacuation routes and the citizens impacted, impacts to the infrastructure, potential impacts to the sewer project that's proposed on Captiva that may hook into the city of Sanibel's sewer system. We'd also like to see the South Seas Island Resort proposed plan so that we know what we're getting into, what the potential density could be. And if there's any confusion about the plan, it's because there's been somewhat of a lack of transparency in what that plan's going to look like, what the potential density is, and the heights that could result as a change to the Land Development Code. So finally, we request that you provide public meetings within the communities affected by the changes of the Land Development Code, on island, off island, just making sure that all of our communities can engage in this process. And we really appreciate your time and due diligence here and look forward to coming back after the 5th or 6th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ken Suarez, followed by Hayes Hill.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Greenwell, for bringing this motion to the table. Commissioner Ruane, thank you for seconding that motion. Folks, I feel like I'm on this time limit now until September 5th, which really is not enough time. Everybody rushes through these speeches. I don't want to rush through the process. So what is the process? Do we have a process? Do people stall the process? So folks, we need some guidelines on what that process would be, because today we are here because there was no process followed. Okay, I represent the 12 condominium and homeowners associations within South Seas Island Resort. We were not made aware of this at all because there was no process initiated here to let the citizens inside the resort and outside the resort speak on this very sensitive subject. So what I would ask, and I appreciate the time you're giving us, but I would appreciate some kind of a direction on how you see this should go. Because frankly, it hasn't gone very smoothly, and I will tell you, there's not one person that I represent inside the resort that doesn't want to see the Timbers organization succeed. We want them to succeed because when they succeed, we all succeed, okay? And the county succeeds. But folks, we have to do this in a way that one entity is not taking all the oxygen out of the room. So I would beg you guys to let us do this properly with process. Let the owners, stakeholders, get their time to speak to this, and then when you guys go to make that decision, understand that you're deciding for a number of folks who bought into a property that never thought it would go to this extent. Okay? I appreciate your time. County Manager, congratulations on your retirement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hayes Hill, followed by Bill Finley. Thank you very much. Supported the motion. Okay, thank you very much. Bill Finley, followed by Mike Miller. I believe that's Councilman Mike
Bill
Miller.
Finley. I'm the president of Marina Villas Condominium Association. We're 40 privately owned units on what's called South Seas Island Resort. We face directly opposite the hotel that we're talking about exempting for height and density. We support the motion to postpone. I would ask you to listen to Kevin Ruane, Commissioner. He's the one that's closest to us and knows how we're going to be most affected. Timbers has stated a number of times that they want increased density, going from 2 rooms, two livable floors to 3 increases density by 50%. They've also asked for an exception for the hotel, which could add another 275 rooms, 100 that are now counted, plus 175. And I've added up numbers well into 400 to 500 more units if they get everything they want. So I'm in favor of delaying this. I don't know what kind of emails and letters that you've gotten, but I don't know anyone that's in favor of this except for the one developer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Miller, Councilman Mike Miller, and then Carrie Schumann.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thanks for the opportunity to comment. My name is Mike Miller. I'm Vice Mayor of the City of Sanibel, and I can report to you that the citizens of Sanibel are very concerned about the impact that these proposed changes to the Land Development Code would have on our community. We held a special City Council meeting last week, and 360 people attended either in person or virtually. And the concerns expressed at that meeting, which seemed to be pretty much unanimous, focused on the adverse impact that increased density in South Seas could have on Sanibel's traffic congestion, our efforts to avoid an auto-urban environment, and our ability to timely evacuate in advance of a storm. Thank you, Commissioner Greenwell and Commissioner Ruane, for the motion. I think it's a good idea to have it a delay, to lower the temperature a little bit, to have some thoughtful discussion of the issues, and maybe most importantly, to separate the issue of resiliency from the issue of density changes. Greater resiliency is certainly a very critical goal, but progress on that issue should not be held hostage by unrelated proposals pertaining to density changes that could very well be harmful to both communities of Captiva and Sanibel. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Carrie Schumann, followed by Emily Hess Anderson.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm the Coastal Resilience Manager for the Captiva Conservation Foundation, and as you mentioned, my name's Carrie Schumann. You know, the reason I wanted to give comment today was because, obviously, in that role, I think a lot about resiliency. And I do agree with where things currently stand, that I'm not sure what's being proposed is representative of resiliency. So I think the continuance, I want to speak in support of the continuance because this is such a big issue and there is so much at stake for these 2 very vulnerable barrier islands. And I think this is something we have to take the time to get right. There's a lot at stake if we don't do this right. So some of the things that we think about is the fact that we are going to continue to face intensifying hurricanes. So it doesn't mean that Ian was necessarily a one-off. It means that we have to really think about our place in the context of these intensifying storms. It means that we need to think about our place in the context of flood events and what that might mean for safety, for evacuation. You know, proposed potential impacts and reverberations towards density changes means we've got coastal systems that are at stake, these natural systems that provide us, you know, some significant protection and also provide us some significant protection, not just to Sanibel and Captiva, but also to the mainland. So those are definitely at stake and really need to be considered in terms of the impacts this could have, and also our infrastructure and services. So we need the time to do that right as well. For instance, with the sewer project, if we're not able to pursue that, groundwater and sea level rise could impact the functioning of those systems. So again, I'm just speaking in support of the fact that I think we need to take the time to have proper stakeholder input and to really pursue the correct resilience process that makes sense for both our islands.
Emily Hess Anderson, followed by Jeff Kavanaugh. And as she's making her way up here, Commissioners, typically when we have hearings like this, I like to take a break every 90 minutes. Does anybody need a break, or do you want to continue?
If maybe we could focus on the actual motion that we have before us today is for the time that we're actually voting on the motion to be delayed to September, not about the actual project itself or zoning issues. Maybe we could stick to the topic.
Thanks, Commissioner Green. So, yes on a break, or no, keep going? All right, we'll keep going then. Just let me know if anybody...
Raise my hand when I have to.
All right, if anybody needs a recess, let me know. All right, good morning.
Morning. I'm Emily Hess Ankerson, Executive Director for Captiva Civic Association, also a resident of Sanibel. And we appreciate the extension in time. Thank you for that motion. I would like to just encourage each of the 5 commissioners to come out and visit Sanibel and Captiva between now and September 5th and learn more about the current concerns and resiliency needs of our islands, and to listen to the people who live and work on Sanibel and Captiva. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Kavanaugh, followed by Jeff, looks like, let's see, Jeff Kavanaugh, followed by Jeff Powell or Panel? Or, is that? Okay. Both Jeff Kavanaugh and Jeff, is it Paul? Oh, okay, very good. Thank you very much. They waived their right, or waived their time to speak in favor of the motion. Les Kaplan, followed by Lisa Reardon. Les waives his time in support, and then Lisa Reardon. Okay, and then it looks like Thomas Sadowski would be next after her.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Reardon. I am the chair of the Land Use Committee at the Captiva Civic Association and a member of the board. I would just like to tell you that the Captiva Civic Association has been in existence since 1936 and has always focused on issues affecting the community, such as the ones that we are talking about today. I'd like to thank the commissioners not only for listening to everyone today, but also personally thank you for the opportunity to have spoken with all of you in the last few days. I greatly appreciate your time and also your thoughtfulness in thinking about what was being said. I think that has shown today in the motion that I thank Commissioner Greenwell for making, and for Commissioner Ruane for amending to the September 5th and September 6th dates. While all of you know, and everyone in this room knows, that I would have preferred a no vote, I understand that you've given us the opportunity to have the community provide the input that should have been provided as well, to get all the stakeholders together so that we can best determine what gets presented to you in the future. And also, I would like and hope that South Seas and Timbers would also be present so that all of us can hear what their thoughts are, what their plans are, why they feel they need increased density, why they feel they need increased heights. So again, I thank you for that opportunity, and we support moving this to September 5th and September 6th.
Thank you. Thomas Sadlowski, followed by Gwen Gittens.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Thomas Sadlowski. I represent Bayside Villas Condominium Association. It's an association with 102 owners within the gates of South Seas. I appreciate the motion that you guys have placed forward. I would have hoped that you would have given us even more time. South Seas and the staff have had months upon months to discuss the issues, and we are being left with 3 months to try to understand all the presentations and come up with a solution. So I would kindly ask if we can have an additional 30 days. That being said, everybody on Captiva and Sanibel will be affected by the proposed changes, but no other owners more acutely than those within the resort. I belong to the Council of Presidents that was founded by Ken Suarez. We have had many, many, many meetings with Timbers over the last year and a half, and they have shared none of this information with us. One of the things, or the two biggest questions that we get from my owners is, how did a question about resiliency turn into a discussion or a request for additional density? I don't think one thing has anything to do with the other. And then if we're going to raise buildings for resiliency, what does adding additional floors to those buildings have to do with resiliency? We would have appreciated a no vote, but I'm in support of the motion today. Thank you.
Thank you. Gwen Gittens, followed by Jay Brown. Gwen, are you here? I don't see her coming forward, so Jay Brown, let's go ahead, and if she comes back, we'll get her. After Jay Brown will be Sarah Spector. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Jay Brown, President of the Captiva Community Panel. You have received probably thousands of emails urging you to vote no. You have heard from virtually every civic organization in Captiva urging you to vote no. I wish you were voting no today, but I very much appreciate and support your resolution to give us more time. The central reason why you have raised the community to such anger and vigor in support of this is that, number one, you are potentially prioritizing the interests of a single developer over all of the residents of Captiva, with follow-on effects to all of the residents of Sanibel. Secondly, and most importantly, this is precedent setting. If you make these changes for the benefit of the developer, why would not every other developer be entitled to make these same changes? The fear you're dealing with is spreading the genesis of dramatically increased development on Captiva and affecting our neighbors in Sanibel. So I encourage you all to direct county staff to work with the Captiva Community Panel and try to forge some sort of solution that will help South Seas. We want South Seas to succeed, but we need a solution that addresses the concerns of Captivans about promoting increased density and changing the nature of our island. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Spector, followed by Larry Shupp. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Spector with Retzel and Andrus, and today I'm here on behalf of RLR Investments and Royal Shell Realty. I'm here today to support the motion, but I did want to come up and speak to you because I know you've heard from a lot of stakeholders, a lot of different groups, and we just wanted to make sure that RLR and Royal Shell, with over 500 properties managed and rented on Captiva alone, has a seat at the table in these discussions. So we will send substantive comments, but again, if you would allow us to participate, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Larry Shupp, or Shoup, followed by Jana Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. My name is Larry Shupp. I am the president of Committee of the Islands on Sanibel. We have been in business for almost 50 years, and our mission, to a great extent, is to protect the local environment and to preserve the small-town character of our barrier island communities. I am speaking today, and I'm in strong opposition to the motion. I am obviously a voice in the wilderness, but that's my point of view. Your request to staff in January of this year was to propose amendments to the Land Development Code that would eliminate unnecessary obstacles to post-disaster build-back. Instead, staff has proposed amendments that would enable significant increases in building height and hotel room density to a single property owner on Captiva, South Seas Island Resort. That proposal is inappropriate, should not be considered, and by simply putting it off until September, you're really just kicking the can down the road. Today is the time, this is the time to reject that proposal and deal instead with the issue of resiliency and post-disaster build-back. Thank you.
All right, Janet Jones, followed by Kathy Biggs.
Thank you for letting me speak. I agree with postponing it. I kind of wonder why, if it started in January 17th, why all these people are here that are arguing because they didn't know anything about it. I don't think our Lee County works that way, so I'm surprised at that. I'm going to make it short. We already lost Fort Myers Beach to Hurricane Ian and Margaritaville. I was born and raised here. We don't want to lose our small town, small island feeling of Sanibel and Captiva. Besides, it's too small for an island to support additional traffic. We don't need more units or higher units. Please don't allow this variance. Thank you.
Kathy Biggs, followed by Summer Kilgore Mendez. Is that Summer? Okay, thank you. So Summer Kilgore Mendez waves in support of the motion. Go ahead.
Kathy Biggs, this has kind of gotten to be useless, but anyway, I would like to read Timber's website of who they are. They say, while our business model evolved, our core...
I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you could just talk on the motion today, I appreciate that. We can debate the merits of it.
Well, I appreciate the time. I would like them to live up to their core values. I would like them to do what they say in this process, which is working with the community. They say they value working with the community, so I really am asking them to do that, to be authentic, to be transparent, and to care about the environment. And during this time, I would really ask them to seek those things with the community panel and with the residents of Captiva.
That's fair.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. I'll call John Lai, followed by Christy Anders. John Lai, oh, there he comes.
Like me, hard to see.
What's that?
Like me, hard to see.
Chair Hammond, Commissioners, thank you very much. John Lai, Sanibel Captiva Chamber of Commerce, President and CEO. As our business community recovers from Hurricane Ian, no one disputes the importance and immediate need of quality lodging facilities back on our islands. However, I can assure you that in doing so, there's no more important priority than making sure that resilience is at the center of every conversation. And there's no more important group of people that need to weigh in on that topic than the people who live and do business on those barrier islands. Increasing density at the end of our barrier islands with one way on and off does not appear resilient or safe. But without defined density requests, it is impossible to know the potential impacts. The Sanibel Captiva Chamber supports the postponement and the opportunity for a hard reset that this motion gives the proposal so that the community that has the most to lose or gain can have the input that we deserve. Thank you very much for your motion, Councilman Greenwell, and Chair Ruane or Commissioner Ruane for your second as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lai. All right, Christy Anders, followed by Lyman Welch. Good morning.
Good morning, Christy Anders. I'm concerned about kicking this down the road to September if this is what you're going to kick down the road, because this is unacceptable. That's my bottom line. This is how much sea level has changed since I first moved to these islands and started hitting a rub rail when I docked my boat. There's so many things, so many dynamics that have changed. And this does not allow for resiliency. It does not allow for our community to thrive. Please stop it now. Remand it back to the staff to rewrite the LDC so that it can go to the LDC review committee before it comes to here. There's already been public meetings. You're on
You're on the last public meeting that we could have input on. It needs to go back to staff and be rewritten from the very beginning. So please don't just continue this. Send it back to staff to rewrite it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lyman Welch, followed by Matt DePauls.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name's Lyman Welch. I'm here on behalf of the Calusa Group of the Sierra Club. We would have hoped for a no vote on this proposal today. I think if you're continuing it, you really need to reset and go back to the beginning and have staff involved. SCCF recommended doing a traffic impact study of adding this density and what that would involve. So if you're going to continue it like your motion proposes, you need to ask the staff to do that traffic study. You need to ask the Timbers Corporation to come up with what their plans are so people actually understand how much density there is being proposed out there. This proposal out there is unacceptable for a fragile barrier island. It will create a significant amount of traffic that impacts people who are trying to evacuate and people just trying to get day to day from their jobs, not just on Captiva, but on Sanibel as well. And the height density is not good for wildlife. And the sewer project, your staff should also look at that because there has been discussion about connecting Captiva's sewers to Sanibel, and adding increased density may totally prohibit that, and you would have water quality adversely affected by this proposal. So I would have appreciated a no vote. I understand if you're going to continue it, I would ask you to give your staff direction and the community direction as well, because your staff has been studying this since January, and there's been no public transparency. There's been no public involvement. So have some direction for when public meetings are going to take place and people can have input, so it doesn't come all down here. We're all back here in September again, just saying the same things again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's do Matt DePauls, followed by, the gentleman who lived at 2416 Beach Villas, Captiva.
Matt DePaulis. I'm here today as the Environmental Policy Director for the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation. I'm giving these comments in support of the amendment. I'd like to thank you for offering the amendment, and thank you for extending the amendment as well. I think that having more time to look at this issue is going to be so important because there's really few people who understand how important our environment is to our way of life than people who live on these barrier island communities. And that's our natural environment that protects us in these storms and drives our tourism-based economy, bringing people in from all over the world to enjoy our beaches, our fisheries, and our waters. But that's also our human environment, and that's knowing your neighbors and understanding what's going on amongst the community on your island. Because when you live on a barrier island, if you don't like your neighbors, it's really hard to get away from them. You don't have a lot of places to go. So I think that we can take the time now with this amendment to really assess those. I look forward to working with staff and working with the process to engage the experts so we can understand the ramifications of these decisions on our natural environment. And it's great to hear that South Seas Island Resort wants to come to the table and engage with their neighbors, and that will protect the human environment on these islands as well. So I thank you for voting yes on this amendment today.
Thank you very much. All right, sir, come forward. And then after that will be Kate Gooderham and Ken Gooderham.
I'm Robert Huber. I support the motion to postpone.
Okay, and it was Robert?
Robert, and last name Huber, H-U-B-E-R.
H-U-B-E-R. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Okay, Kate Gooderham and then Ken Gooderham. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kate Gooderham. I am not a Captiva resident, but I have worked on Captiva in a variety of roles since 1980. And on July 3rd this year, I will have been married 41 years on Captiva. On the subject at hand today, which is this amendment and continuance, I think you've got the right concept. But I think a third person needs to make a further amendment, which is to move it at least until November. Staff had 5 months to put this thing together. The community needs 5 months to respond to it and to make it right, and to have those conversations. And particularly since over this summer is a big vacation time for both staff and people in the community, that makes it even more pressed. So I would suggest more time for that reason. Another reason is that you authorized the Lee County Recovery Task Force to recommend how Lee County should become more resilient. That was a brilliant move, and I am honored to be a member of the Natural Resources Branch. But if we're going to talk about resilience, let's read their report. And their report comes out in December. And it's really worth considering looking at that report before you make a decision, unless you view all the work that the community is doing on this task force to just be mere window dressing. So I urge you to move this. If you're not going to just kill it dead, then let's at least move it to November or after the task force provides you with their report. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Ken Gooderham, and then Nadine Slimak. I think that's right.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Ken Gooderham. I'm the administrator of the Captiva Community Panel. Been working on Captiva for, I don't know, a long time, more than 20 years, on issues such as this. I would support your motion. I would also support, because I'm a wise man, what my wife just said, which is listen to your experts, have staff start over, come to us, come to Timbers, talk to the Resiliency Task Force. You've got a lot of people working on some important issues, and resiliency is a very important issue for this county. That's without question. So the intent is good. Let's get it right. So additional time will be very beneficial, but I support the motion either way. Thank you.
Sir. Nadine Slimak? If I pronounced that incorrectly, I apologize.
You wouldn't be the first. I'm Nadine Slimak. I'm the Vice President of the Greater Pine Island Civic Association. Obviously, a lot of people are here representing Captiva and Sanibel, but we wanted to make sure our voices were heard as well. We're concerned about the Land Development Code changes that change how heights are calculated on the island and also removes the height restrictions from the Pine Island overlay. This is a very large concern for us. Our residents our residents developed the overlay years ago to protect the island, to protect our coastal rural way of life, and we want to ensure that continues. We are in support today of the motion further. However, we would have hoped for a no vote, frankly, on this, and we would like to hear more about how it's going to impact Pine Island. And we also stand with our fellow islanders on Captiva and Sanibel in support of them and their desires to control the course of their island. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good. Well, that concludes all the cards that I have turned in. Do we have any other comments? All right, please come forward and state your name for the record. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Okay, if you'll just form a line in front of the door, and then when you get up here, we'll go ahead and call on you and ask you to state your name for the record when you get up here. And honestly, if you could fill out a card too, that would help our clerk.
11:30.
Yeah,
Sure.
we got to finish public comment first. Yes, sir.
If you don't conclude by 11:30, could we take a break?
Yes,
11:30?
absolutely. 11:30, we'll take a break.
Hello, my name is Marcia Ellis. I'm representing myself as well as the Interloop Working Group and Responsible Growth Management Coalition. So I wanted to take just a moment to say that the rural communities of the Density Reduction Groundwater Resource Area, the university community, other inland communities, we stand with Sanibel and Captiva with concerns for resiliency becoming perhaps a catchphrase for development that is not in the best public interest. I also believe very much in providing education and hard skills and tools to inform public input. So I'm going to share. Would you go ahead and show that? Thank you. So yesterday I had some great comments or conversations with Florida DEP, and I'm going to say that they provide some tools.
Pause real quick, Marcia.
Yes.
So, Mr. County Attorney, could you kind of explain what we're talking about here when we say try to tailor your comments to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you've attempted to explain repeatedly during this morning's session, the comments of the speaker should be directed toward the motion that's on the floor, and that is to extend this matter until September 5th and the companion comp plan amendment until September 6th. So any discussion, any comment should be relative to that motion and the gravamen of it, which is the extension of the public hearing, not the substantive aspects of the matters that will be discussed on the 5th and the 6th.
All right, so basically, if you agree with it being delayed or continued, or if you don't agree with that, and then just reasons that support your
or no.
point that you're trying to make.
Sir.
Okay, great. If you could do that, Ms. Ellis, that'd be great.
Yes, of course. I'm just bringing forth a tool that is made available by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to inform resiliency for government, and this had previously been available through the, also to the public. Right now, it's restricted to the government. So I would just like to see things like the Coastal Adaptive Resiliency Tool brought into the community for the government, for the staff that puts together these land development changes, as well as for the public. So this is to close that information gap and then bring in those hard skills. I think this is important when you talk about the future direction of public outreach. And that's why I felt compelled to bring this forward.
With all due respect,
Thank
unless
you.
the tool is geared toward the extension, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Ellis, for your.
I appreciate it.
I know we'll see you on several other items.
Yes,
I've
sir,
got
you
your
will.
card here later today.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Councilman. How are you? This is Councilman John Henshaw from the city of Sanibel. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. And Roger, congratulations on your scheduled retirement, if you're going to retire. You might not, but I don't know what his plans are, but I've been here 20 years, and you've been a remarkable addition to the team. So greatly appreciate your work. Next, I would like to, I'm in favor of the motion on the floor. The operative word, however, instead of just postponing, I would, as Commissioner Ruane mentioned, is to rework this. This issue is around resiliency and rebuilding back our community after Ian. That's our focus, and that should be the only focus. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. We have a short time window, and I'm hopeful the people behind me, and some have left, will be very active over the next 2 or 3 months. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Very good. And the clock may be malfunctioning, but they're assuring me that they're getting it to the 3 minutes. So we'll make sure that we get everybody. I don't know why it's going right to a yellow light, huh? Okay, but we'll make sure that you get your full 3 minutes. Please come forward and just state your name for the record. We can get you one after you're done speaking. Good deal. Good morning.
My name is Valerie Tudor. I'm a realtor on Sanibel Island, Captiva Islands. My family has also owned property on and off on Sanibel and Captiva since the 40s. So besides being a realtor and a full-time mermaid, I've also been a consultant at the state, county, and city level for 30 years on PD&E studies. So I just wanted to say, first of all, I'm in support of the amendment. Thank you, Commissioner Greenwell. Thank you, Commissioner Ruane, for extending that. We need all the time. I think in probably the immortal line from Cool Hand Luke, all we have here is probably a failure to communicate. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of communication. I read the full report that the staff put together and worked pretty hard on. There's just been some lines that have been eliminated. I think all we have to do is go back to the process, because from what I understand, originally it's supposed to be going to the Captiva Community Panel and bringing them into it and all the citizens and getting that public input. So I'm sure that you'll all be able to do that between now and September 5th. We've got that time to do that. And Commissioner Wayne, I think that that's what you're asking to do. And I think all the people in this room will be here and be willing to be a part of that. And I know I want to be a part of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, and please come forward, ma'am. And you're here to speak on the Captiva matter? Yes, I am. Okay, great. Yes, it is the public hearing number 2, Land Development Code. There you go.
Good morning. My name's Denise Eberly. I'm here to support the Captiva Sanibel agenda or amendment that they're requesting. I'm also a member of ALVA Inc. I'm on the board of directors there and chairman of the oversight committee. So all I have to say, in this is that what has been said for the Captiva South Seas applies to other areas of our county. We all agree resiliency post the loss of life during Ian. We can do better for generations to come so they may have the opportunity to enjoy all that has made Lee County our piece of paradise. Thank you, commissioners and staff, for wisdom in delaying South Seas. Please apply that thoughtful deliberation and time equally to other communities in Lee
Ms.
County.
Everly, very good.
Thank you.
Ms. Hussey, do you wish to speak as well then? Good morning. We got the green light back.
Green light back. Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Allison Charney Hussey. I am here on behalf of the Clinic for the Rehabilitation of Wildlife Crow, who many of you have supported throughout the years. Our concern, and thank you for postponing, of course, our concern, and we hope that all of the commission will keep in mind not only the resiliency of the island, but also the environmental impacts. And we know that ecotourism is a large part of Southwest Florida. We are protectors of the wildlife, and we know that with additional density, light requirements, there can be an adverse impact on our wildlife, both native and migratory. And so we just want to make sure that everyone is keeping that in consideration as well.
Thank you for your comments this morning. All right, raise your hand. Any further speakers at this time then? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment at this time. I'd like to, Commissioner Pendergrass, go ahead and take a brief recess, and then we can come back and deliberate. Let's take a recess till 11:45 and then reconvene here in this room. Great, thank you. Stand by. So here's the plan for the rest of the afternoon. From 11:45 till noon, we will go ahead and debate the motion that's on the floor and consider that motion. From noon to 1 p.m., we'll go ahead and take a break for Roger's reception. At 1 p.m., we'll go ahead and reconvene in the chambers here to finish the rest of the county commission meeting. And then there is a possibility that the 1:30 workshop may be delayed, but it'll begin immediately after the county commission meeting is finished. Do we have Commissioner Pendergrass? Do we have Commissioner Sandelli? Somebody could grab Commissioner Sandelli.
I could.
Commissioner Pendergrass, you're welcome to.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, being here today. And we heard your comments and things. Really appreciate it. I think this is great. We're having public comment like this and hearing each other talk and everything. But also, the thing is really important to people to understand the history, how we got here, what the process. I heard today the word process, and the last few weeks I've been meeting with a lot of the groups of people, and what they talked about was the process. So I'd like to go on our county attorney. Can you tell us a little bit the process that the county goes through in the development codes and how we got here today as far as the process was what's happened in the last 4 months in the public meetings?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. You're recognized.
Thank you. Michael?
And Michael, you've been working on this and all the staff, and thank you for your hard work. And also how it affects the whole county. It's great to hear the Pine Island people here too, because it actually does affect the whole county. So if you could give us a little bit of background.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon now, Commissioners. Michael Jacob, Deputy County Attorney. We have followed the process. The county has a process for adoption of ordinances. We have followed that. That is a normal process for us. The typical process in which we've gone through today and earlier is to send Land Development Code amendments to the Land Development Code Advisory Committee. The LPA, we are required by state statute to take these to the local planning agency. We've also taken parts of this ordinance, parts that some individuals here aren't even aware of, but it has nothing to do with Captiva. It also went to the Executive Regulatory Oversight Committee. All this has happened since the beginning of this year, and it has taken this long to get to the public hearing, which was held on June 6th, which was the direct-to-public hearing, which then sets this hearing up today. All of that's part of your requirements. It's consistent with state law. There's no failed process here. I think what you've heard is individuals refer to a process that is not this one, which is under your administrative code 13-3, which is it's a situation where local planning groups can come to the county, request funds to go through a public hearing, public outreach process to come up with comprehensive plan amendments and land development code amendments that are specific to their little planning areas. That's what's happened with the Captiva Planning Panel in the past. That's not what this process is.
So it's a separate issue, correct?
That's separate
That
altogether.
process unfollows. So there was a public meeting with the LPA, with the EROC committee back on May 10th. There was a public meeting, public comment. Back on April 14th, there was a public meeting. The ordinance was presented to the Land Development Code Advisory Committee. All that process was followed, correct?
Correct. And individuals have indicated this is all being done now and people aren't here. We have to start the process when people are here in January. We're now in June. We understand people leave and go back up north, but we can't stop the process simply because of tourist season. So we need to keep moving forward. This is not the end of the process by any stretch of the imagination.
Some of the comments I had yesterday when I met with some groups of people, they were asking questions about site plans and future development. That also could be considered a zoning issue, which we cannot, maybe you could talk a little bit publicly so people can understand the zoning process, how we cannot be, as the ex parte group, be involved with that conversation or participate, even direct staff regarding a zoning application or future enhancements to zoning.
That's correct. The Lee County regulations prohibit county commissioners, their assistants, the hearing examiner from communicating with members of the public about an existing rezoning request or an anticipated rezoning request. This is clearly an anticipated rezoning request that South Seas will be presenting at some point in the future. At any point from now until the end of that hearing, members of the public are not permitted to speak to any of your assistants or you, either indirectly, directly through emails, letters, texts, tweets, whatever it is. They're not allowed to speak to you about the substance of that case. We're trying to make it clear through these processes and these meetings that anything that South Seas is going to do is going to be presented to them in accordance with our code and regulations, which at that time, South Seas and their representatives are required under your regulations to hold a public meeting out on the island and explain all that it is that they plan on doing. And hopefully by doing that, kind of belay some of the sky is falling fears.
And this does affect countywide too. It's not just the islands itself.
It's not just the island itself.
It's just countywide. So I thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Wayne, and for volunteering for having those public meetings in the islands to inform people what the county's actual intentions were with this amendment coming forward. Because we heard today about sea level rise, we heard about that, and we see buildings now that need to be rebuilt, and people's homes cannot be rebuilt based upon the current height. So due to the sea level rising and because of the new height regulations by the federal government. So that's why this is hopefully going to address all these issues so people can rebuild their homes and businesses.
I think a lot of individuals in this audience and their friends will be surprised to understand the circumstances in which their existence is going to be relegated to if these amendments aren't passed. I have agreed with Mr. Suarez to meet with him and go over some of the questions that they have, because there's a lot of misinformation out there as to what we're doing, but more so as to how their future development is going to be impacted.
If it wasn't changed today, if we left everything as it is now, what would happen in the future? Would people, as far as need to rebuild their homes and businesses?
Well, let's go through a couple scenarios. If your houses were destroyed or your businesses were destroyed based on the storm, the county has a build back policy. Okay, the build back policy allows you to rebuild to the density in what you had prior to the storm. The problem is people think they're grandfathered in and that we'll just be able to rebuild it. You can't, because when you exceed the 50% rule, you're required to bring your property back up to existing code, which is the flood elevation has changed, your property now has to come up. If your height restrictions have not changed, your property comes up, you're getting squished. Your building developable footprint is going to be squished. Now, that's not going to apply to everybody. We understand that. The county's regulations that we have proposed are designed to allow you to build up, meet those standards, and for people like myself and other people who are concerned with building up, I don't want to rebuild my house just to the minimum flood. I want to build it as high as I can possibly go to avoid the potential flood. And I think that's where we started out in January with regards to coming up with regulations to allow the additional, I've called it the fudge factor, but the additional 4 feet of space to allow people to go above and beyond just the minimums. That's all part of this ordinance. I think a lot of people aren't really following exactly what that's going to do for them in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to get that all out there because this board, since I've been here the last 11 years, we've been very supportive of all the Barrier Islands, from the millions and millions of dollars of purchasing, acquiring property near Desjarlais, everything from the vote a few months ago denying Eden Oak, which was really so important to people along the waterways. We have always been supportive of the board. I just want to make sure everybody understands we will continue to be supportive of the islands, but we have to look at these factors and how it affects people's lives now as far as rebuilding. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Real quick, I've got some questions too for the county attorney's office. I wanted to start by just kind of level setting where we're at. I don't know how we got to where we are today, but somehow today it feels like to me we're at the rezoning hearing for the South Seas development. Right. But when we first gave direction to staff in January 2023, it was to direct staff to review and prepare amendments to existing county regulations addressing height, setbacks, and other development limitations that are potentially restricting residents' ability to rebuild their homes and businesses in a manner that reduces potential flooding threats, including provisions of the Land Development Code applicable to the South Seas Island Resort. So it was included in that motion, South Seas, but I don't believe that our intent was to look at only one development, at least when we gave direction to begin preparing these amendments as a Board of County Commissioners. I think as a Board of County Commissioners, what we talked about on that day were the things about the varying methods of building height and how, depending on what community you live in Lee County, you actually have a different measurement standard that you have to meet. And so certainly I was persuaded by the argument that, okay, there should be a uniform method. If you live in Lee County, we should know how we're going to measure your height. We should have a uniform method throughout our land development code so that it's predictable, so that people understand what they can apply for. So I thought that made sense. So my question is, and it's rhetorical, how did we get from trying to amend the land development code to help hurricane victims rebuild after a hurricane to basically the rezoning hearing that focuses only on one resort? And I guess the real question for maybe Mr. Wesch is there a way during this period between now and September 5th and 6th that we can bifurcate the two, that you can come back with, here are the codes that need to be changed to help everyone in Lee County, regardless of if they live in North Fort Myers, San Carlos, Captiva, Pine Island, all of them. How can we separate those necessary changes to help people rebuild from the hurricane from anything that could be seen as increasing intensity and density for South Seas or height for South Seas? Because that's, if somebody wants to come in and ask for more density and intensity or more height on their specific development, we have a rezoning process that they can go through. And that's where the community can weigh in and see those site plans and talk about that specific site. But what I'm concerned about is helping the whole community. So if you could help me with that.
And Mr. Chairman, we can certainly take a look at that. I would be hesitant to comment today as to specifics that could be segregated out. As you recall, part of the controversy, if you will, that ties to South Seas is the binding letter that they are currently held to. We would need to take a look at the implications of segregating out as you've outlined. We can certainly do that. I just don't want to make that commitment today because I don't know the extent of the commitment, but we will certainly perform that analysis and keep the board informed.
Okay, commissioners, could we also have a discussion and maybe even get some feedback from our staff on what the process that we want, give our staff direction on what we want this process to look like between now and September 5th and 6th. So it sounds like these have already gone through the Land Development Code Advisory Committee, the Executive Regulatory Oversight Committee, and the local planning agency. What else do we want to have happen between now and September 5th and 6th? And Commissioner Ruane, I see you've got your hand.
So again, I appreciate Commissioner Pendergrass's comments. I appreciate the process we went through, and I own this motion, okay? I think the confusion is there was a 2-minute conversation, and watch the video, because it's certainly been indicated there's a video out there. Watch the video of what I indicated. And I talked about resiliency, and I talked about potential solutions coming back to us, okay? I think this community, when you talk about South Seas isn't just timbers, it's the villas and all the condos within South Seas. So that term is pretty broad. And that's where a lot of the confusion starts to come in. Because again, it's land development codes to development in South Seas. So Are we doing it for the condos? Are we doing it for South Seas, the resort? And there's just lack of clarity. What I was hoping to do was, again, I asked for some basic ordinance to be changed at one point in time. They came back to me. The first time I ever saw this. And again, we interacted with staff. I just thought it was interesting, since I talked about resiliency, that someone would at least have a conversation. And nobody did till June 6th. I did ask for this to be deferred, and I'm glad we are where we are in this deferral. But honestly, I think people's input needs to be part of this. And I honestly believe, in talking to Mr. Spencer, he's got unbelievable plans and unbelievable diagrams that I think he's anxious to share to the community, and they should see them. So again, what I asked for as a commissioner, and again, new to the process, you guys are 10-year veterans, I'm not. But we talked about resiliency. I just wanted to be transparent with the community. I think the plans need to be there. I'm really grateful for the input and the wisdom here together, and I'm confident we can make the necessary adjustments working together collectively. And again, I just think we need to have, a couple of meetings, have Timbers there, have our staff there. Let's make this easy, because you're right, we can't talk about this to a zoning, and if you don't give people certainty, you don't give them clarity, they're unfortunately going to be in a position where they're going to think the worst.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. You got to remember, they went through one of the most tragic situations ever, okay? And I've governed on that island for 13 years and over a decade as a mayor, just trying to make sure we're transparent. And if I didn't know anything, and listen, okay, there was 2 meetings that Cecil referred to. I didn't know anything about them, shame on me. But in the same token, if I get communications and staff does a great job briefing me on all items, I don't know why I'm not briefed on a specific item like this. And maybe that's not the process, but not necessarily is every process that's been here, because we've done it in the past, is good government. And I just want to be transparent.
Okay, very good. So commissioners, again, so we have a motion and a second on the floor to continue this matter to September 5th and 6th. Is there any other direction that you want to give to the staff as part of the discussion of that motion that you want, what you want to see happen between now and September 5th and 6th? Then Commissioner Pendergrass, real quick, and then back to you.
I learned something yesterday sitting with the groups of people. I think half the properties in South Seas are not even included in this because they're only owned, the properties owned by the Timbers. So I learned yesterday of all the different villas and hotels and different rooms, which ones actually were highlighted. I think Ken had the map for that. So I learned that yesterday as far as that, because that's something the Board of County Commissioners do not usually get involved with. That, but maybe staff could provide that to Commissioner Wayne, and so we can share with the groups which properties would see the changes related to the Timbers South Seas, because it wasn't all the houses like along the beach line. They're separately probably owned, so they're not part of the South Seas. Inside they're inside the gate, they're not included in that development order, right? The LDC.
That's one of the misconceptions here. If the proposed ordinance is adopted as it sits today, the exemption that South Seas currently has from the Captiva plan would still be in place. The individuals that own property within the South Seas area are still bound by the administrative interpretation, which sets the height at 35 feet and the other regulations. Only after they go through a rezoning can the property owners be relieved of that obligation on the administrative interpretation. There are people out there that aren't owned, the property is not owned by Timbers. So when Timbers comes in for their amendment to their zoning, they're not going to be included. Only the property that the Timbers people have. So everybody else that is outside of that rezoning application are still going to be subject to the administrative interpretation.
Even though they're behind the gates, that's still.
Even though they're behind the gates.
That's what I was going to clarify.
That's
the confusion on this. That's something we don't deal with even through zoning.
No.
Like the traffic study and all that, we don't.
That's all at
LDC.
zoning time.
Right.
Right now, there is no traffic study needed until they come in with their zoning, and everybody knows what they're going to do.
Thank you.
You said 2 things that I want to just reiterate again, because I think it might be the first time that some people are hearing it.
Yes.
So currently today, what exists in the code, not the proposal, but what currently exists today and has existed for years, is there is an exception already?
Yes, not only for South Seas, but other buildings in the South Seas and the Captiva area have exemptions written into the Land Development Code. It's not new. I mean, I'd prefer to strike it all, but that's not the case. We have, throughout our lead plan and our land development code, exemptions for certain projects. South Seas currently has an exemption from the Captiva plan so long as it meets the requirements of the administrative interpretation. They want to rezone that, so in order to do that, they would have to then change the land development code to allow them to get out from underneath the administrative interpretation and go through the rezoning process. That's what all of this is about. That's why when you say, how is this attached to South Seas? South Seas needs that in order to build higher. That's what they need. They cannot rezone the property because they're in a catch-22. They're exempt as long as they're consistent with administrative interpretation, but if they go to rezone, they're no longer exempt under the administrative interpretation. So you gotta do something first, and that's the deal with the exemption. But they're exempt now.
Okay. So to me, this is some of the things that need to be explained to the community as we go and have these meetings over the next 60, 90 days. Yeah,
I'd love to
Commissioner
ask,
Ruane.
Mr. Jacobson, I appreciate, Michael, all you're doing. I mean, there's clarity obviously provides tranquility. Clarity provides tranquility, and that's basically what we're trying to do, okay? You and I have had conversations, sir, and I wanted to delay this June 6th. You and I had a conversation the subsequent week, and there was even confusion on who was the appropriate party to delay this. We're at this delay now, but you and I had a different conversation, and again, I'm just trying to have clarity. And the conversation we had was the Timbers had to delay this. Okay, that's the conversation we had. Dave Hardner was there, you were there, Mark Moore was there, there were people there. Okay, so there's been some lack of clarity. Let's just clear this up. Let's just do what it is, and this commissioner is more than willing to have staff come at me with you, get the Timbers people, and get everybody together, because I can tell you one thing, I govern on this island. There's 4,500 emails, and let's just take the temperature down. Everybody's got wounds from the storm. Let's heal like we did as one team. Let's come together. But there's been lack of clarity, which unfortunately has created the anxiety.
And I'm willing to go, and I've spoken with Mr. Suarez during the break. I'm willing to sit down and go through all of these items, because as you've heard today, a lot of people are still reiterating some of this misinformation, and people hear that and they think, oh, that's the truth. Well, if we'll sit down and we'll go through what's here, what's not here, and then people can make their decisions based on what is actually said. I'm willing to do that. I have no issues with doing that. It's realistically timing. We've got plenty of time to go and say this is what it is. We do not have the plans for South Seas. That's for them to decide. If you're there, they cannot communicate that with you while you're there. So they'll need to have that discussion with the members of the public without your presence because of the ex parte rule. But we can go through that. But as the code, as the ordinance sits today and then proposed amendments, they do not authorize any sort of development on South Seas. What it provides for is a mechanism for South Seas to rezone their property.
But it doesn't approve the rezoning.
It does not.
It just gives them the opportunity to ask for one. So
Correct.
it gives them their day in court, the due process that a landowner in the United States of America gets from owning land.
The Land Development Code and the administrative interpretation created a catch-22 for the South Seas Resort that they're trying to get out of it. They're trying to get from the administrative interpretation to a rezoning through our process. The administrative interpretation, I've heard people claim, oh, you can't amend that. There's amendment language in the administrative interpretation, but it refers to a process that does not exist in Lee County anymore. It refers to a planned unit development, which we have exchanged for a planned development process. That's what they're going for. That's what they want to do. The limits and intensity and all that stuff, they can come out and discuss that. Greg, I don't remember your last name, very first part of this meeting told everybody what their proposal is.
You know, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Spencer met with me on Friday, and I really appreciate the effort you gave me. I don't know if you had 30 or 40 pages. I don't need to see them, and I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize me. But I think the community would love to see them, and I think they would do you a great service to do that. And I think the sooner you can, because when we were in this June 6th meeting, I kept on asking for information. We said we'll have it June 20th. So the anxiety with lack of information, and your information, sir, that you shared with me is impeccable. Share it with the community. You'll help yourself. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Is there any further discussion before we call the question then at this point? All right, I see no further discussion, so I'll call the question. Are there any objections to the motion on the floor? Okay, I see no objections, so that motion is approved and it's continued to the September 5th and 6th date. Thank you very much. Folks, at this time, we're going to go ahead and recess until 1 o'clock, and you're welcome to rejoin us for the rest of the commission meeting at 1 o'clock. Let's find our seats, please.
You always hear the theme from John before the show.
All right.
Right.
Huh?
Well, we're still on the recap.
Line of the day, Mr.
But we had lunch, though.
But we had lunch. Yeah, we'll pause just a moment for the minutes.
Clerk ran out of capacity.
I feel like I'm going to call your county now.
Yeah.
Not that bad.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we will resume the meeting of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. I've got 102. So looking at the recap, we've got request by county administration to defer the item A1 on the administrative agenda, which would be approve the resolution for the FDEO loan for Hurricane Ian recovery to August 15th, 2023. Do I have a motion to defer that item?
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Commissioner Greenwell. Do we have any comments or questions for our staff on that? Okay, does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the deferral of item A1? I see no public comment. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, also we have a request by county administration to revise item C23. There was an attachment that outlined some revisions they want to make to the fraud, waste, and abuse policy for the CDBG DR financial management and grant compliance certification submission to HUD. Does somebody wish to make a motion to incorporate those revisions into the item?
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner Wayne. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any discussion on that? Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on those revisions? Okay, we'll close public comment. Any further discussion? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, that takes care of everything on the recap that needs a motion. We'll now move to the consent agenda. This is items 1 through 61 on the agenda. Commissioner Greenwell, do you have any items you'd like to pull for discussion?
I do not.
Commissioner Pendergrass?
None.
I have none. Commissioner Sandelli? Commissioner Ruane? Okay, at this time then, I'll take public comment on the consent agenda items. So you'll have one period of 3 minutes to speak on the consent agenda. And we'll pause for 1 second.
Yes, thank you. Just a second, because we're working with the dot camera. All right. We could have that come up, please. So my name is Marsha Ellison. I'm speaking on agenda item 20. And I just want to, thank you, sir. When I'm speaking on agenda item 20, I'm talking about the Kingston development. In the packet, number 18, it said this agreement would not be recorded in the public records of Lee County. This is a request for some access, some renting of some additional county land. I'm going to point out that we are talking about what is already 6,500 acres. And we have some panther deaths and telemetry in this general area where request for county land is being made. And the parcel I'm concerned about is this one right here. I don't understand why, with 6,500 available acres, that we would need to have more county land, putting commuters at risk, putting panther at risk. I think 6,500 acres is enough, and that there's plenty of opportunity to stage utilities on those lands. Now I'm going to talk about agenda item number 36, which has to do with, my objection is to the not to divulge certain information. I feel like that the taxpayers of Lee County deserve to know everything that's discovered in the study, and there should be no exclusion of that information in decision-making. I'm going to also say that as we go through this, that it looks like the study is for A and B, but also includes C and D. I'm excited to see Lori Lair coming on board. I'm saddened at the prospect of not having access to whatever that she discovers, and I just ask that not divulging information I don't consider to be to follow sunshine law, and I think that in the wake of hurricane recovery, assessing personal risk to life, to property, and transparency in decision making, that we all deserve to have access to these studies. That's pretty much, oh, I have one more thing here. I understand that the item 36 is just for A and B and not quite clear about how we're going to study the other evacuation zones, if those are coming through the FDP companion to this. And also the funding is not quite clear in my review of the materials to see if the $635,000 is going to cover, or if we're going to be paying for all of these experts on an hourly rate. I just want to make sure that whatever it is that is determined and the actions of these well-respected experts is available for the public, because the public has a right to know. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. All right, I have no further cards on the consent agenda. Does anybody else wish to speak on any consent agenda items? Okay, I see no more speakers. So would somebody like to make a motion to approve the balance?
Move the balance.
Okay, so motion from Commissioner Pendergrass to move approval of the balance of the consent agenda. Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any discussion, commissioners? I see no discussion. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. We'll turn now to the administrative agenda. Item 1 on the administrative agenda was just deferred when we handled the recap. So, Mr. County Manager, please introduce item number 2 on the administrative agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrative item number 2, under procurement management, asking you to approve the 5th ratification of emergency expenditures executed under emergency resolution 220931. Mr. Winton, will you please present the item?
Yes, Commissioners, these are emergency POs related to Hurricane Ian, and they're primarily for urgent repairs, for remediation services, fence repairs, portable toilet rentals, and lift station repairs.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for our administration? Commissioner Ruane?
Mr. Whitten, is there any new contracts that, I know you forwarded all the contracts in the past, any new contracts that relate to these POs?
No, they're not.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Commissioners, any further questions for our administration? I see no questions. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on administrative agenda item number 2? I see no public comment. Back to the board. Does somebody wish to make a motion?
Move the item.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass, second from Commissioner Ruane. Do we have any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Please introduce item number 3, Mr. County Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, we are asking you to direct a public hearing amendments to the procurement ordinance. Mr. Winton, please make the presentation.
Commissioners, this is for a public hearing proposed for August 1st to make some changes to the procurement ordinance. And I guess the two most notable ones is changing not the county manager authorization level for expenditures, but the formal procurement process for construction bids and RFPs for services to do a formal procurement process over anything up to $250,000 instead of anything over $250,000 for a formal procurement process. Right now, that's at $100,000. That mirrors federal guidelines, and also just based on the size of the county, the magnitude of the expenditures that we make annually, this would be a help and much more efficient for procurement management and also the construction industry, the services industry out there that are doing business with the county. A lot of them are not going to go through a formal process for something that's around $200,000. So it'll be, I think it'll be, so what we would do is we'd get 3 quotes up to $250,000 for these types of services. The second change, notable change, is for, as we just saw, for ratification of emergency purchase orders after a major storm such as Ian or a major disaster. We would bring a summary of those purchase orders to the board at the next meeting after the disaster, and then a formal ratification within 60 days.
Okay. Any further introduction, Mr. Winton? Mr. Winton, may I ask, you did a great job explaining what we're doing. Could you just really concisely explain why we're doing it?
Well, because I think for emergency purchase orders, we want to be as transparent as possible, and we want to stick to a certain time frame that was not delineated before for a major disaster. It was for if we have a water line break or something like that. But we're doing that so we can have a specific timeline for the board to see what those emergency purchase orders are, what the magnitude of them is, who they're with, just immediately following a major storm. And then the other one is really really a couple. One is for the management of procuring for procurement staff, and just the size of the purchases we do now for the county, and that would be more efficient for procurement staff to do quotes up to $250,000. And then the business community, right now we have a hard time receiving bids through a formal procurement process between $100,000 and $250,000. The business community is not going to lock into something that's going to take 5 months and try to build in that margin, especially with changing conditions. So I think the business community prefer to be part of a quote process up to $250,000 and then formal procurement over $250,000.
So just to restate, I think part of the reason why on some of these changes is it sounds like workload and efficiency's sake. It sounds like our procurement department has a lot of workload between that $100,000 and $250,000 threshold. It sounds like it's also a workload issue for the folks who are going to bid on $100,000 to $250,000. So at the size that we are now, with more than 800,000 people in population, big county, actually spending $100,000 is pretty easy these days. With inflation, I mean, we've seen cost increase of more than 30% in the last year. So what you're saying is that's why you believe the 250 would be a more appropriate threshold there. So I think that helps. I just like to get to sometimes we do a good job of explaining what we're doing, but the why. I know that our clerk wanted to make a comment too real quick, and so at this time I'd like to recognize our clerk, Kevin Carnes, and then we'll jump to the board.
I did pull this item.
Okay.
So at some point in time, if I could weigh in, because I asked this item to be pulled, it's on the recap.
So if you could,
don't know
then
the
that's
process
fine, yeah.
we're going through.
Sure, yeah, and administrative items are usually up for discussion.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely.
No
Would you
problem.
like, Mr.?
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. I don't wish to take up much of your time. I've known you had a long day today, but I feel compelled to speak before you today to just keep us all on the same page. And before I get started, I want to thank county administration. They've been great partners in working out the little details that are associated in this ordinance. So I appreciate your time and collaboration through this process. As you all know, the Constitution outlines my roles and responsibility as clerk of court. As an independently elected constitutional officer, I serve the citizens of the county in the title of clerk of court, but that title also means that I serve as ex officio member clerk to the Board of County Commissioners, county auditor, county recorder, and the custodian of all funds. There are a wide variety of tasks that my office fulfills to support this board, and we take that responsibility very seriously. I speak before you today in regards to the procurement ordinance changes as comptroller and county auditor. I had the opportunity to meet with county administration just yesterday to discuss some topics, and we had a very productive meeting. I appreciate the efforts of the county manager's office to modernize the procurement ordinance to help expedite processes and streamline workload in response to Hurricane Ian. It is my duty and obligation, though, in this process to identify risks, ensure transparency, and make recommendations to strengthen internal controls. There are several recommended changes in the ordinance which increases our risk. My goal is to make sure that this board is aware of those risks so you can determine whether you would like to accept them or mitigate them. My team and I are in the process of documenting those risks and recommendations, and I ask that you give them consideration before making your decision. My report, as requested by Commissioner Wayne in the May 16th meeting, is nearing completion, and I have one more county to go visit next Wednesday. I plan to deliver a copy of my report to all parties by Friday, June 30th. I appreciate your time this morning, or this afternoon, and I hope to answer any questions that you may have.
I have a question real quick. Would you have time to, between now and the August 15th meeting, be able to finish your report and then summarize any recommended mitigation efforts to mitigate?
For the August 15th meeting, I'm planning to have my report complete by the end of June. So I know what county administration is faced with. I think they have valid concerns on why they need to get this to public hearing. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what risk that puts us in, and then allow you to make a well-informed decision. And so I plan to have a document to everyone by hopefully next Friday. I take a trip to, so what I've done as part of this process with the guidance of Commissioner Wayne's May 16th comments is to go see how this process works in other counties within our region. So I picked some small counties, some mid-sized counties, and big counties that are on the coastal region that had experience with procurement-related changes. And so I've been working on that for the past 2 months. Miami-Dade's visit got postponed due to a change in leadership by the governor. And so I had to put that back to this coming Wednesday, not tomorrow, the week after that. So I'll need maybe 2 or 3 days post that meeting to put my thoughts in writing and to send you my full analysis on this particular ordinance.
And then one more question. I apologize, Commissioner Wayne. One more question for our county attorney. It doesn't spell out in this motion requested here when you're requesting. It says direct to public hearing, but it doesn't give us a date. What is the date that we're looking to schedule this for public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Winton indicated August 1st.
August 1st. Okay. All right. Thanks again. Commissioner Ruane, you have a comment? You're ready.
I do, sorry. And learn the protocols as we do. We had a pretty robust conversation. We all agreed that the clerk of courts is our comptroller and someone that obviously we could insert to additional improve internal controls. I was just looking for his, obviously, opportunity to weigh in on this. I just thought it was premature that we talk about this. If he can have those items worked out, I would just feel more comfortable if we went to August 1st on this.
Okay. So very good. So the motion requested to schedule it for a public hearing on August 1st, is that something that you're?
And as long as Kevin has an opportunity, clerk of courts, and apologize, to work with staff as he's indicated, we just want to identify so we understand if there's some issues, maybe they could tighten them out. I just think it's going to be a better process. As the clerk of courts, he's writing our checks, but I think it's important to make sure he understands whatever type of obligations we are involved in. And he looks at them in the front and not in the rear. When you write a check, it's already been expenditured. So I'm looking forward to his things. We had unanimous consent at the 16th that we would allow him the opportunity. I just want to hear what they are.
Commissioner Pendergrass.
Yeah, you're right. He's writing the check, but that's based upon our approval. So I have a question. Kevin, you said the Miami trip was delayed for the governor's change of leadership.
Yeah,
I remember seeing on the news. What happened in Miami? The change, somebody got appointed or something?
The clerk of court, the governor appointed a new clerk of court, so I had on the schedule to go meet with the clerk interim.
And the reason for that was?
I'm sorry?
Why did the old clerk, what happened to the old clerk over there?
The prior clerk passed away, so there was an there was an interim appointment that the chief judge of that circuit made, and then the governor just in the past 2 or 3 weeks made a new appointment.
There's always ethics things going on in Dade County, Broward County. I was making sure that there's nothing like that, because I don't want to mirror Orange County or Miami County.
Well, and I want to be clear, Commissioner, because you mentioned that a couple of times, that I'm not recommending that we follow any particular county's process. My obligation to you all is to make sure that I'm dotting the I's and crossing the T's to make sure that we're making a well-informed decision. Throughout my travels looking at these counties, there are things I agree with and there's things I don't agree with. But to be very clear, Commissioner, I'm not a policy setter. I'm not a decision maker in this process. I am a ministerial role in this process, giving you the risks and allowing you to decide how you want your staff to procure business in Lee County. If you want to accept all those risks and not make any changes, that is certainly your prerogative. I'm not endorsing any particular county based upon their political ideologies or their particular chemical makeup between board, county administration staff, and the clerk to the court.
So have we, maybe this is for staff too, have we identified, as far as this item here, I can understand why it's going to fast track things faster, not going, but we still, at the end of the day, anything over $100,000, the Board of County Commissioners still have the final approval. So it does not give any more authority to the county manager.
That's correct.
So that doesn't change that. So yes, I'd love to hear those risks in the future, if there is a risk, and we do need to know that and take that. But if you know of anything that's happening today, have I asked you before, as your predecessor, Linda Dahl, I remember sitting down 11 years ago with Charlie Green when I first got here and asked if there's a problem within the agency that we could do differently. I had the same conversation with Linda when you were there. If there's anything different, and we've had great audits ever since then, and make sure that we continue that great effort to being transparent and making sure we do everything right. So,
Thank you for your comments.
Commissioner Green?
If I may, Chairman, make a comment about it, raising the threshold amount from 100 to 250. I think one of the things we should consider in this thought process as well is when people are bidding on a contract for the county, they have to factor in the fact that this takes months and months to get there. I don't believe as a county we're very efficient because of the timetable it takes for some of these contracts to get out. Many of the people don't bid on them. Many of our contractors in this county just don't bid on them because, one, they can't schedule. They don't know if they're going to get it. They don't know. They're not sure what the process, how long the process could possibly take. Sometimes it takes longer than expected. So in the proposals we do get, I believe most contractors are obviously going to pad that contract for something that's unforeseen. So I don't think we get great deals by having it so low. So I just want that to be out there to consider. The 250, you're going to get more bids, you're going to get more accurate bids, and I think you'll get some new people to the table bidding on some of our county projects in the future, something to think about.
Excellent.
I agree 100% with Commissioner Greenwell. There's 3 new board members here. That both I look to, both Cecil and Brian, that actually continues to give me wisdom. But we don't have the procurement down. I'm looking to fix this once and for all, and I have no problem with the 250. In the world I come from, and it's the accounting world, the comptroller is basically the person that just has that role. And since he has this unusual role of being the controller, I just wanted him to look at that, and I expressed that in the 16th. We all agreed. And I think once we fix this, and he says yes, whatever, I'd like to understand our internal controls. I mean, I had a conversation yesterday when we were going through the briefing just to, what type of risk I have as a commissioner in certain things. So there are certain things that I'm always going to be concerned about. And coming from this world, the comptroller generally approves a procedure, makes sure that he eliminated the risk, and then we go forward. The 250 is true. I'm just trying to make sure they talk at the end of the day, and that's what we all agreed on the 16th. I think we need to expedite this, and honestly, if we have this down, we could also be open-minded as we grow to make 250, 350. There's nothing to prevent that, but I think it's certainly prudent to have someone look through this one time, and he certainly has that ability as a controller for us. That's what we were talking about in the 16th.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I want to be very clear that I've been very transparent with county administration that none of the risk is associated to the dollar amount of what authority that you are giving to your staff to procure that. So you will not see in my report a concern or even a risk about the dollar amount that you're giving your county attorney or your county manager. My thoughts are to make sure that as you're changing the RFP process to a quote process, that we look at how those processes and procedures are changed to ensure that you make a decision on whether you want them to operate the same way. One example, and I think we talked about this a little yesterday, is by moving from a formal bid process to an informal quote process, all of those records, at least today, would not be available online. When you have a formal bid process, those entire bid packages and scoring mechanisms are all part of county procurement's website. If you were to migrate to a 3-bid process, that may be more efficient for you all to procure business, but those records aren't necessarily as transparent as they were before. So I just want to make sure you know that, so when you make a well-informed decision on the ordinance, you kind of know what it means for you all, and what it means for county administration, and of course the business community that you support.
Yeah. I think that's a great comment. So let me ask a question to Mr. Desjarlais. So what I'm hearing is there's definitely a desire to mitigate risk, and I don't think anybody could be against the idea of highlighting and understanding what new risk may be included in any policy change and then how to mitigate that. Could you suggest a process to work with the clerk's office between now and the August 1st hearing to understand what he'd recommend for mitigating risk and how to, if there are any amendments that you would see necessary to the proposal, be able to bring that to us? How would that process look?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think it's pretty simple. We can schedule meetings with the clerk and his staff and our fiscal staff, Pete and a couple others, and talk about risks that the clerk may have identified. We don't know what those are at the moment. We've not had any legal problems with our procurement process in the past, or at least in the recent past. I don't remember the last time we had a lawsuit, and I'm not sure what it is that we need to fix. If there's something, then we're obviously happy to do that, and we'll work with the clerk on that. But in the case of this amendment to the procurement ordinance, it doesn't increase anyone's spending authority, so there's no additional risk there. Anything over $100,000 has to come back to the board for approval, no matter what. And then just raising the amount for a formal bid from 100 to 250, we're working to see if we can't get more bids from the private sector, make it worth their while to actually bid. It's not. I can't think of a contract we executed in the last few years that was $100,000 or less. So anything worth bidding on is going to be $250 or more, and then that reduces the workload for procurement. They issue hundreds and hundreds of procurement packages to the street every year, and it's just keeping up with the economy and inflation.
So I'm comfortable then that between now and August 1st, you all would have the ability to get together to have that conversation. And sounds like your report's going to be done well in time for that. There could be that meeting between administration and clerk's office. So at this point, I'd be comfortable with going forward to schedule the public hearing for August 1st. But I turn to the board now, and Commissioner Ruane, if you'd like to.
I agree, and I don't think the word fix is what I would use coming from the internal control area. The word I would use, internal control, to strengthen. And I think by strengthening that, we have had a blessing, and if we want to have a more fundamental conversation to go from 250 to 350, we know we've gone through this, we've looked at the clerk of courts, we've had them making sure they strengthen this opportunity, and we've had someone look at that. For me, from an internal control point of view, it is about strengthening. It's not fixing. It's putting in another step. It's having us to be a little bit more transparent. When you do quotes, in the world I come from, quotes aren't nearly as comprehensive. So that's the concern. We're approving a quote, which many times a quote and an invoice end up not necessarily being the same thing. That's my only issue. As long as we're fully transparent on quotes, I'm fine with that. But there's nothing to fix here, and I want to make sure I'm just more about making sure we're strengthening the internal control. But I'm good with your suggestion for August 1st, sir.
Okay. At this time then, does somebody wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to move the item forward.
Okay, motion for approval from Commissioner Greenwell, second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? Commissioner Pendergrass? Yes.
Roger, so this is June 20th, August 1st, we're going to come back. Are you going to, your staff will have time to meet based upon schedule? I think there was some, they met yesterday at 9 o'clock yesterday, right? I was actually going to attend that meeting, but it was another meeting with you guys. Have you had trouble in the last few months trying to get together? Is going to be enough time to actually meet? Will your schedules conflict?
Commissioner.
Because I think there were some requests to the clerk's office before, and there wasn't able to meet or not. So I know we're on July break, and I don't know your office schedule, what your schedule's like, because I think there was some issues before. They couldn't meet with you until yesterday.
I understand this is really important business for the board to decide on.
So you'll be able to take care of that before August 1st? Great, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, then at this point, we'll go ahead and call the question. Are there any objections to the motion on the floor? Okay, I see no objections. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all for your time.
Yep. Okay. That concludes the administrative agenda.
Chairman?
Mr. County Attorney?
Did you call for public comment on that?
I will call for public comment right now. That was just a practice vote. You guys did really good in rehearsal. All right.
Long day.
So does anybody wish to speak in public comment on administrative item number 3? And this is legit. If you have anything you'd like to bring up, we want to hear it now. Okay. All right, I see no public comment, so I'll go ahead and call the question again. Are there any objections to the motion? No. Okay, I see no objections then. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you, sir.
All right, let's move to the 9:30 public hearings agenda. Please introduce item number 1, public hearing number 1.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Amanda Swindle with the County Attorney's Office. I have your first public hearing this afternoon. This is a public hearing to adopt a resolution to adjust the Lee County Utilities rate schedule. If you will recall, back in May, this board voted for a flat 8% per year rate increase over the next 5 years. So that's what this resolution does. It has been legally advertised, and utility staff is here for any questions.
Okay, very good. Any questions for our staff on this? No? All right, I see no questions. Has anyone come to speak in public comment on public hearing number 1, the Lee County utility rate schedule?
Thank you. Actually, I have.
Okay, we'll call Marcia Ellis.
Yes, I just have the sworn item.
Oh, I see you wanted to speak on all the public hearings, is that?
Yes,
am
actually, I
reading that
did want to
correct?
speak on all of those, and I'm just going to wait for my,
Okay, we'll start the time when she's ready then.
okay, wonderful.
Okay, go ahead.
So as we adjust that, I wanted to speak on this issue, and I had followed the previous hearing and the follow-up news story about this, and have been anticipating having the opportunity to talk about this issue, because I understand that the rates had not been increased for a long time, and that had benefited the public. Now we're in a place in time where those rates clearly need to come up. And when we talk about projecting into the future and the future cost of water, I think there are some important considerations to weigh. The public is concerned that by continuing to draw so much from the superficial and the intermediate aquifers, that the direct source users, the people who have private wells on their property, as well as the cost of the public supply, the amount of money that it takes to take that water of decreasing quality the deeper you go down in the well, and to make it drinking water standard, DWS, is going to increase the cost of these services greatly in the future. Whereas if we take measures that are protecting our superficial and intermediate aquifer, then we could continue to have really good quality water into the future that would cost less money to bring it up to drinking water standard. For instance, when we go from the mid-Hawthorne to the lower Hawthorne, I've through some research, discovered that there is 30% waste of that water. So 30% of that water is not potable. All right, so you're wasting it. Plus, you're looking at the amount of energy that it takes through the reverse osmosis process. As we move deeper into the Floridan, those costs increase even more. So I would just like to see a cost analysis for the future as we move away from the superficial and the intermediate aquifer deeper into the lower Hawthorne and the Floridan. Because we have some good guidance from South Florida Water Management District regarding the lower West Coast water supply, and I would like to see the actual figures done, because I think that comes and reflects on some of the decisions that we make in community development and protecting, let's say, the density reduction groundwater resource area for the future and evaluating those risks going forward. So thank you for the opportunity to come forward and speak about this. It has been on my mind for a period of time. Thank you.
Are there any further comments on this item, public hearing number 1? Okay, I see no more comments, so we'll go ahead and close the public comment. Commissioner Pendergrass, you're
I had a
recognized.
question for staff. I'm not sure we can answer. The question is, I've been contacted by the Gateway Service District and some other vendors that buy in bulk services. I'm not sure if Pam or Roger Smelson staff had a couple questions about that.
Ms. Keys?
Thank you, Pam. I don't know if I received a letter from Chelsea O'Reilly. She's this district supervisor of Gateway Service District. So Gateway Services District purchases water as a bulk customer. I think we have 12 total countywide. And I know you had some conversations with them. I think they're concerned with not just the rate passed on to the users, how it's going to affect their CIP in the future. I don't know if you want to, if there's anything else you can add on to. I know that one time they were asking for a delay, or maybe not include bulk users on this rate increase because it's going to affect their CIPs in the future. So if you could give a little bit of background on that, please.
Thank you. Pam Keys, Lee County Utilities. Yes, we work very closely with the Gateway District staff. We have been working with them regarding rates for the last 6 months or so, prepping them, especially after our workshop. We had a little bit more information. Really, we talk a lot about rate increases for CIP, but a lot of what rate increases are needed is just daily operations and regular replacement and recovery from Ian. So I understand that they also have their economic constraints and that they would like to see something different. Our approach has always been to treat all customers equally. So we put the 8% increase on their bulk rate just like all of our customers.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand why, because like the last 8 years, we didn't do any increases. The cost of them has increased. Obviously, cost of supplies, labor, everything else has increased. I was just wondering, I know you've had some conversation with them, and I wasn't sure about the other bulk users also. Okay, thank you, Pam.
Yeah, very good. All right, any further questions, commissioners? All right, so does somebody wish to make a motion?
I'll move the item.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Commissioner Greenwald.
Mr. Chair, just, and I said this during the process, I mean, I've been involved in this process in another city, and we set the benchmark, and I appreciate the prior speaker's comment, but costs are something that are unknown. I've been in situations where we set the bar at 4% when we were in Sanibel. There were some years we didn't have to have an increase because revenues came in enough. There were some years where we had to go above 4%. So this is a baseline. I think we're going to do the best we can. I'd love to tell people I have a crystal ball to look at the next 5 years. I just think it's important to understand it's a baseline that we're setting, and it's not in stone. We'll do the best we can. We look at it every year. So I think that's important. And I appreciate everything you all did to keep the cost down as low as you did for as long as you did, because we're playing some catch-up ball now. I just think that's important for the record.
Commissioner Greenwald?
Commissioner, thank you for that comment, because that's a great point, and I know we all feel the same way. Thank you.
Very good. Any further comments? All right, seeing no further discussion, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Please introduce public hearing item number 2 has already been taken care of. Please introduce public hearing number 3.
We'll do 2 again?
No.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Joe Adams, the County Attorney's Office. This hearing has been properly advertised. I have the affidavit for your clerk. So this is a hearing to amend the Lee County Well Code to grandfather local soil boring and elevator shaft contractors due to the state preemption issue. Also make several changes needed to deal with new industry practices. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. Any questions, commissioners? All right, I see no questions. Has anybody come to speak in public comment on public hearing item number 3, the ordinance amending Lee County's Well Code ordinance? I see we have Ms. Ellis.
Yes, you got it? All right, great. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this issue. I have a private well, and when I went through here, I wanted to understand better about how updating the ordinances might impact me and the community. And so I'm going to point out this graphic. First of all, this is relating specifically to the UICs, the underground injection. Right now, I just have some concern about making sure that changes to the system will allow the functionality of LIPA to work so that I can go on there and access the information about how deep my neighbors' wells are, et cetera, because I do utilize that feature. And I see there are some changes by using the Florida water well application. And then second of all, it is a very big deal for there to be an exemption for these underground injection wells. They don't happen often, and they have major repercussions. So here is what the application looks like. So I'm looking for verification on that. Why it's problematic is that, if we inject water into an aquifer that we're later using for drinking water, that can have serious consequences. And there are 3 types of exemptions. There's a water exemption rule for quality, there's a limited aquifer exemption, and risk-based assessments. So primarily, I'm concerned with Class 1 and Class 5. There are statutes that relate to that. Extensive permitting. That also includes areas of review going a mile out, even for exploratory ASR wells. Go forward with that. Here is a GIS map of the Class 1 and Class 5 wells here in Lee County. And there are very specific rules regarding noticing. If you request an exemption, it has to go in to the paper. Here is a limited aquifer exemption that ran through Marco Island. So I'm seeing some bottlenecking between the noticing procedures that are going to be brought forth in the public hearing, as one right after this one, and what could potentially happen if people don't know that they have to look at the newspaper, if there's going to be an injection well put into their community that could affect them and they could step forth as a petitioner. So I just appreciate the opportunity to bring this forth because these are our collective resources. And I want to make sure that there's clear procedure for if exemptions are brought forth, that the public know of the risk and have an opportunity to become petitioners. Thank you.
Okay. Has anyone else come to speak in public comment on public hearing number 3? Okay, I see no further speakers. Back to the board, commissioners.
I'll move the item.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Ruane and the seconds from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any further discussion on that item? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Please introduce item number 4, Mr. County Attorney's Office.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Amanda Swindle again with the County Attorney's Office. I have your 4th and final public hearing this morning. This is a hearing to adopt an ordinance which would allow the publication of legal notices and advertisements on Lee County's website as opposed to in the newspaper. This is in accordance with a recently enacted Florida statute, and this has been legally advertised. Okay. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for our County Attorney's Office or our administration? Okay, I see no questions.
Thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, very good. Ms. Ellis, I guess you're on your way up to speak.
Yes, I am. Thank you. So this happens to be an issue I was reaching out to county staff about even before it was brought forth in the initial consent agenda, where I pulled it out. And specifically, here are the public concerns. So there are, so we know that when legislation comes forth, like with the grandfathering in some contractors, like we just talked about, that sometimes there are gaps. And what sounds great ends up having problems down the road. And so it was my hope that when we had an opportunity to look at this legislation and change the notice policy, that we could examine some of these communications gaps. So I would just want to bring those forward. At the original hearing, there were residents from Pine Island that stated that they lack the infrastructure post-storm to be able to access the information, and that older folks don't really know how to use the virtual resources. Historically, there have been some controversial actions that have rolled through past Hurricane Ian, for example, post-Hurricane Irma. It was just 32 days when a land swap came through that had been noticed in my neighborhood, and me in particular, we had no idea. So, you know, there are some gaps there. Second of all, there's some conflict with the federal guidelines, like I just pointed out, with noticing people that there's wells potentially pumping into aquifers. There's also issues sometimes with leegov.com with their functionality, such as accessing links for information for zoning hearings or for agenda items. There are some communications shortcomings that could be addressed in a more comprehensive approach. There's no provision currently when we talk about noticing to reach people or allow for participation in zoning if they, for instance, have COVID or if they're in a second home. There's no provision yet to provide for proxy for residents who can't participate because they're out of town. There's some inconsistency in terms of the amount of time to be noticed. Some things are 10 days, some days are 7 days, and it's not really clear about who would be doing the enforcing if the noticing procedure didn't pass muster. What are the consequences if those things aren't noticed? In my opinion, that noticing would be better if it went out when an application was filed, and that way that the public could work with staff through public outreach and give input in the process as it makes its way through staff approval. And also, I've seen time and time again that with comp plans, nobody knows. And even though people are appalled later, it would be much better if that were looked at so that you didn't run into that issue down the road.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. County Manager, you're recognized.
I apologize.
Yes.
But one of the statements up there was that the older folks don't know how to use technology. How old would that be?
No, that's fine.
No, I'm serious. How the hell old would that be? That mean me? Or who? Come on.
All right. Does anybody else wish to speak in public comment on item 4?
Move the item.
Okay. We have a motion for approval from Commissioner Ruane and a second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Commissioner Pendergrass.
Thank staff for working on this. This is going to save the taxpayers $135,000 a year. We've been, as I'm glad Marcia mentioned, Pine Island, not haven't noticed because my little family and friends and Bridges and other people here can remember that, they used to use the newspaper, Sam Cooke's article, Lee Melzick's, for mullet wrappers, they call them. So that's where that term came from. A lot of times people use the paper for mullet wrap. But anyway, so thank you again for staff. We're going to save the taxpayers a lot of money on this. We still get public notices out by using our website that old and young can get to. So hopefully that will be accessible to everybody here in Lee County because we do have broadband and internet countywide here. So.
Very good. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on it? All right. I see no further discussion. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Now, I do have public hearing number 5. Okay, good. We were all hoping it was the last one, right?
After this morning, I'm sure
Mr.
no one
Jacob.
else wants me up here. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I have your 5th and final public hearing for this morning/afternoon. This is a public hearing to adopt an ordinance creating the Salt Leaf Community Development District. I have in my possession the initial petition, updated petition, and affidavits of publication. We're going to enter that into the record. The County Attorney's Office, Community Development staff reviewed the petition and find it meets all the statutory requirements to prepare and adopt the ordinance. We are here to answer any questions along with representatives of the Community Development District staff.
Very good. Any questions for our administration or our county attorney's office? Okay, I see no questions. Thank you, Mr. Jacob. Has anyone come to speak in public comment on item number 5? I see we have Ms. Ellis.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Marcia Ellis. I am concerned about putting 833 people on this property, which is right on Estero Bay. I don't know the position of the Aquatic Bay Management, but I know that they would be very interested in reviewing and evaluating some of the impacts to the environment in the impaired Estero Bay. It can't be good. Putting 833 people out there isn't going to do anything to improve our water quality, and it seems like this is an example of a property that is not suitable for that type of development. I don't fully understand the process that's taking place in relation to the traditional zoning and comprehensive plan process myself. It's a mystery to me, but I can say that from a cursory overview, it doesn't seem to me like it helps us build our resiliency as a community.
Okay. Any further comments on this? Yes, sir.
I'm here on behalf of the petitioner if there are any questions.
Okay, that's Wesley Haber.
Yes,
Commissioners, anybody wish to hear from, Mr. Haber, you're welcome to speak if you'd like to. If not, no worries.
I mean, I would just note that the creation of the CDD doesn't limit in any way any development approval or what will actually be developed on the property. It's just a funding and operation mechanism for the project.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I move the item.
Yes. Motion for approval from Commissioner
I just
Pendergrass.
want to state for the facts, people don't know where, this is a beautiful golf course. Raptor Bay is designed by Raymond Floyd now currently. So as far as the environmental impact, the last 25, 30 years has been environmentally sensitive lands, but it's a beautiful, awesome golf course and look forward to the future development there.
So the motion for approval is from Commissioner Pendergrass, the seconds from Commissioner Greenwald. Commissioners, do we have any questions or discussion? All right, I see no questions and no discussion. We've taken public comment. Are there any objections to the motion? I see no objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, that concludes our public hearings agenda. We have no walk-ons or carryovers that have been noted on the recap. No walk-ons and carryovers? Okay, very good. We've been here for a while. I didn't know if anything new's popped up. So we'll turn to commissioner items at this time. Commissioner Greenwald, do you have any items? No. Okay, Commissioner Pendergrass, any items? I have no item. Oh, actually, I do have one item, but I'll take mine last. Commissioner Sandelli? Commissioner Ruane, any items?
Just that there's a task force meeting on Friday from 10 to 12, and I appreciate all the work that Glenn's done putting together the manual for the CVGR. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Commissioners, at our last meeting, you directed me and the county attorney to negotiate a contract with Mr. Harner to become our next county manager. So we have met and negotiated said contract, and I'd like to ask our county attorney to outline the terms of that. Mr. County Attorney, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to your direction, we did hold a negotiation session or discussion with Mr. Harner. The contract that's before you and has been circulated is modeled after the most recent employment agreement entered into by you sitting as the Port Authority, and that was with regard to the Port Director. The terms and conditions and benefits and limitations are identical to what's provided for in the Port Director's contract. The only modification was to the starting salary, which you negotiated at $270,000. Mr. Harner found that acceptable, and on those terms and conditions, we would respectfully request approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. County Attorney. So Commissioners, any questions at all at this time?
Still want the job after this morning? I move the item.
All right, motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any discussion on the item that's on the floor? You know I can speak on behalf of all of us that we're really excited to work with you, Dave, as well. And thank you it was a very easy negotiation, and really looking forward, on behalf of the people of Lee County, the staff, the team, a seamless transition. So thank you very much. Thank you. All right. At this time, I'll call for public comment. Has anyone come to speak in public comment on the contract for our new county manager? Okay, I see no public comment. Back to the board. We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Are there any objections?
Well,
I see no objections. That motion carries unanimously, and congratulations, Mr. Harner. Thank you. Way to go. Close. Break the applause rule for that one. All right, that concludes my commissioner items. At this time, Commissioner Greenwald, do you have any appointments to make?
I do, Chairman. Reappointment Brandon Miller to the Parks and Recreation Services Committee.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Greenwald, second from Commissioner Ruane. Do we have any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Pendergrass?
I have two. I have a reappointment of Michael Billabuz of the Housing Finance Authority and new Billy Andres for San Carlos Park Special Improvement District.
I'll second that.
Very good. Motion from Commissioner Pendergrass, second from Commissioner Ruane. Any discussion? Any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Sandelli?
I have five. I have one new appointment, and that's Paul Cohen to the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee. I have a reappointment of Clark Riles to the Roadway Landscape Committee, a reappointment of Stephen Brown, Roadway Landscape, a reappointment for Albert O'Donnell for Roadway Landscape, and a reappointment for Melody Nevers for Sheltering Pines, a mobile home village improvement.
Okay, the motion's from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Ruane. Do we have any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Ruane?
I do not have any.
Okay. Folks, I have two new appointments that I need to make to the Tourist Development Council, so I'll need a motion and a second on this. On behalf of the city of Sanibel, I will appoint Holly Smith to the Tourist Development Council, and on behalf of Bonita Springs, Councilman Nigel Fullick.
Move the item.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Ruane.
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Greenwell. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. Very good. All right, that concludes committee appointments. At this time, we'll take up county manager items. Mr. Desjarlais.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just at 1:30, you have a budget workshop with us, or as
Yeah.
soon as we get to it.
What we'll do is, when we adjourn here, we'll do about 20 minutes to handle the switch over, and then we'll meet over there. Yeah,
I was
Commissioner.
going to recommend, can we go to 2:30? If we could make that workshop over there at 2:30. I'd like to go in my room, shut the lights off. I got a little bit of a migraine at the moment.
Okay, so yeah, so 2:30 would be a good start time, then we'll get through the rest of the agenda. Then
Appreciate the
start at
indulgence.
2:30. Perfect. All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. County Manager. Does that conclude your final, you don't want to drop a bomb on your way out, like nothing?
You know, Commissioner, this is a really expensive mic. I was going to do a mic drop, but
There you go.
yeah, it'll come out of my last paycheck.
We'll take it out of Dave's check, not a.
Mic drop, you've earned it. Thanks again, Roger. All right, let's move to our county attorney. Any final county attorney items?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out that it took me 10 years, but on your slide, the county attorney item actually predates now the county manager items, so perhaps that reflects a bit of
All
a
right,
change.
so to our new county manager, your first order of business is to repair the discrepancy between the county attorney items and the county manager items on the agenda.
Well, Dave, you just say it's by age, that's all. Just do that.
Oh, age before beauty.
Tenure. There you go.
All right, so no county attorney items?
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder that you have a 5 o'clock public hearing back in these chambers.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll turn to public presentation of matters by citizens. This is the opportunity to comment on things that were not on the agenda today. I do have two cards. I see Darius Cochran and Amanda Cochran. Are you here? Darius and Amanda Cochran? Okay, I think they left earlier then. Does anybody else wish to speak in public presentation of matters by citizens? Okay, we'll close public comment then. Mr. Desjarlais, can you provide a workshop update?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This afternoon at 2:30, we will be discussing with you a proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24, excuse me.
Questions about the workshop or the budget? We'll have plenty of time to discuss it then. Has anybody come to speak in public comment on the budget, the workshop today? Okay, I see no public comment. We'll close public comment on that. At this time, we will go to our 2:30 workshop across the street, and then we'll be back here at 5 o'clock for the public hearing. Thank you, folks.